Yeah, absolutely. I'm basically just setting up the project right now to, well, basically start one of the first of a new set of animations that we're gonna have in the game. So this is kind of well, I guess it's like the first kind of showcase or like a sneak peek of what's gonna be happening once you're, well, the first time you equip a gun or the first time that you go out of a loadout table, or yeah, it can happen in many places, but it's basically just going to be going from an empty gun coming up on screen, then you load the gun, and then it's basically ready for the first time. So we call it a first equip. It's a feature that was used in Insurgency Sandstorm and other games as well, of course. And yeah, it's just going to be a nice little added detail that we'll have on all our guns, pretty much like when you equip them first time, or if you customize them, you will have this extra flavor animation.
Ooh, very nice. So, all right, so we are officially started. We are live, so let me do a little intro, and then we will get right into it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone out there in the Fray universe. This has been a huge week for us. We just put out the SCP-5K 0.14 update. Glad to finally get that out to the hands of you, the people. Hope you're having a fantastic time with the new Act 3, as well as the Antarctica map and the GOC. So happy to have that in your hands, but still so much work to be done. I am here with Anders, who is here to showcase some new animations that will be coming into the future. So you were just giving an overview. I guess what's the TLDR version of what you're working on right now?
So basically, this would be again an animation that would be part of basically a global set that is going to be on all the guns, which is first equip. So all of the guns will at some point now have an animation where when you are equipping it for the first time, picking it from the ground, for example, or if you're customizing it and going out of that loadout table screen, then this will play and you will basically load the gun from an empty state and then go back to normal base pose, basically. So it's just like a flavor animation, doesn't really add anything. It's something that we wanted to add for a long time. And yeah, we found some time now where, yeah, we're just going to add pretty much as we can in between other tasks. And then eventually this will be pushed into the game as a little, yeah, detail, like many other things that we have in the game. Basically like the inspect, like you don't need it. It's just nice to have. It's a fancy thing. It looks nice.
It's a
So
cool
that's pretty much what we're going to start on here.
So it's a cool piece of flavor animation. Although I gotta ask, there are a lot of guns in SCP-5K. Is every single gun gonna get one of these first equipment animations?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's basically this and a couple of other things that we have talked about adding to all of the guns for a long time. And then when we get the time to actually do that in between other major things, like for example, this update had, well, they had the new guns, or there were, things that wasn't even related to guns necessarily that I had to work on. But when I actually have time to work on the guns, it's typically just stuff that we have talked about for usually years. Could be the first equip, like this one has been something we wanted since we played, Insurgency Sandstorm way back, and we saw that they had it, and why wouldn't we just add that as well? It looks nice, it's a cool thing. We're talking about, different kinds of reloads. Like a fast reload is something that we basically have talked about for a long time, but we haven't had the chance to put into the game yet, which is like you press R twice, and that makes the magazine drop to the ground. Which then means that we need to have a system where you can pick that magazine up again. And yeah, it's just like a big thing where we do want it. It's not so required for the game that it makes for a priority, so to speak. So this is like something that I very much enjoy doing, but it's also something that we couldn't, do sooner. Like we just need to make the game, or the more critical parts of the game first before we can delve more into this.
Well, I can't wait to see you get into it. What do you think are the factors that kind of make a really satisfying first pickup animation? Because it's, I guess it's one of those details. Like, one of the things I really love in the 0.14 update is the bark lines for the guards. It just goes so far to like actually kind of like make the game feel more alive and more like a responsive entity. And I feel like this is also kind of in those lines where it's like at first you feel like you don't necessarily need it, but once it's in there, it feels indispensable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like again, when we play games that we enjoy, in Search the Sandstorm is like the one obvious one that I was working on that ISMC mod for, where it was a lot of nice animations and a lot of different like variations of animation that didn't need to be there. Sure, but they spent all of that time and effort to make basically like a piece of art. Like it's something that you can look at and enjoy for a long time instead of just having the most essential animations. So I think the main thing here is that you want to have, let's say that you're, for example, putting up the gun so you actually see the nice textures. You can kind of look at the gun a little bit, almost like an inspect, and you want to make it, like fast enough so it doesn't like bother you if you're in the middle of the firefight, and it's gonna get you killed because it's too long. But yeah, it's basically just like an inspect, but it comes from having the gun unloaded because you're customizing it or you're just checking if it's loaded or whatever. And it's a feature that, yeah, just looks nice, basically.
North Star wonders, Anders, have you ever been told you look like Rimmer from Red Dwarf?
I can see that. I actually watched Red Dwarf a while back. Yeah, that's true. I guess I didn't think about that.
Now that the 0.14 update is out, was there anything in particular that you were really excited for people to see? Now that they're out in the wild, and we could talk a little bit more about the D class prisons as well as Antarctica.
Yeah, no, honestly, for me, it's been all about the stuff that's not related to animation, really. Like, yeah, I'm of course excited about the new guns, but that's not really what makes the game exciting for me. For me, it was really the additions to level design and programming that we have had in our team very recently, right? Like, we have people working on the AI way more now. Like, it's just amazing to see how fast the AI is actually developing right now. And we have people working on these new levels where, for the first time in a long time, I go into the game and I have no idea. Like I'm getting lost like any other player. I'm trying to figure stuff out, and it's like playing a new game, which is very exciting to me. So yeah, the update for me is just like a new game, really.
That's the beauty of being a part of early access. Every now and then you get it updated, and it's like a fresh experience. Although it could be a little bit frustrating between updates, the beauty is that once you're in, you get to see the game evolve. And there are a lot of great success stories in the early access, and hopefully SCP 5K is going to be amongst the hallowed thrones of such games like, I guess, Pal World and Baldur's Gate 3 and many others.
Yeah, honestly, I think we just need to learn as we're doing it. Obviously, like that's what I'm doing in animation, and so is the rest of the animation team. And we're growing and we're expanding, we're learning new skills, and we're making a lot of mistakes, which is how you learn, basically, right? Like we're just getting through this process as this is basically our first game to run through, which is very exciting to me at least. And it also makes the whole process of, like you said, we're trying to make the best game we possibly can in early access here, but we're also kind of pushing the boundaries of what we can do as a studio, right? So it's a very cool journey to be on right now.
Marty McFly asks, I'm not too fluent on Scandinavian gun laws, but do you ever find it more difficult to model or animate guns without hands or experience, or lack or reference materials for more niche guns such as the LMGs?
Yeah, honestly, we don't have that bad gun laws. Like, it's not as bad as, for example, the UK. I personally own like rifles, pistols, all that stuff, and shoot weekly, of course. So for me, this is just like any other, everyday object, right? Like owning a firearm, and then you go look at other people's firearms and you go to these gun ranges. We had this trip to, for example, GDC, as some of you guys may remember, like the whole team or parts of the team went over to the US. And for 2 days straight there, I just went to, I think I drove for like 4 hours to Reno in Nevada just to get my hands on some full auto guns and some LMGs and just, actually get more reference basically. So yeah, no, it's definitely like decent. It's not as good as the US and not as easy to get everything, but yeah, definitely I can get my hands on pretty much everything I need. And I do learn a lot from just handling the guns, animation-wise, texture-wise. All of that stuff is like just, you have to be hands-on with those objects to understand how they wear down, how they function, how it actually feels to shoot. The fire animations in our game is something that we constantly tweak based on my personal experience. And yeah, it's basically just like a constantly evolving thing as we get better and we understand more about the guns. And yeah.
Obviously, hands-on time is a great thing to have. I hope all of you have seen that wonderful little social media clip I put together of showcasing the Affray team on the firing range, getting that hands-on experience with so many different guns. I didn't know you went all the way to Reno. I thought that like maybe in Seattle. But
we basically had 2 days. Like the first one was just me and a few others from the team, the more hardcore gun people, just like, yeah, we're gonna spend the whole day just driving up to Reno and back, because that's where you actually get full auto, right? Like you don't get that in California. So we just did that, spent like a lot of money on just renting guns for hours upon hours, which was very fun. And of course, the second day was more of the team getting their first experience in some cases with firearms, which was also very exciting.
Was there any gun that you personally like had a blast finally getting to fire out in the range?
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised how much the Scar H, like the Mark 17 that we have in our game, I heard it's too light, like in terms of weight, and how it's really weird how it's like not absorbing the recoil, so to speak. And I got the hands-on experience with that in full auto, and it was just so weird to feel. The bolt was the heaviest part of the gun, just chunking along back and forward. Yeah, very different from an AR 10, for example, which is also in the same caliber, but it's way smoother in my experience. Like it just felt nicer and tighter. So that was fun, and like confirming some of the stuff I've been reading online and basically trying to emulate in our game, right? But can't do that without actually experiencing it yourself, I think.
So it gave you my favorite clip from that whole experience was Al Barney just like holding a gun and being like, "This is fucking metal," which was just to me the funniest thing, because he's kind of like a very soft-spoken guy. So
exactly,
he's like the last person you expect to have a giant gun out of rage, being like, "This is fucking effing metal."
Oh, it's amazing, and that's kind of a cool thing to talk about as well. Just like seeing the gun on screen here, this is something El Barney himself modeled and textured without actually having held like real firearms other than a few like 22 rifles back in Tasmania. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time that he was actually firing bigger caliber weapons, which was, for him, the new fancy like wow experience. But then at the same time, he already kind of had an understanding just from pictures, which is kind of counter saying my point of, yeah, you need hands-on experience, which is probably not true, right? Like you can indeed just learn a lot from getting the gist of what it's supposed to look like and look at pictures. And yeah, it is definitely possible to do it both ways. And it was very fun to kind of see him finally get the chance to do it for real, so to speak, right? Like instead of just looking at those pictures. And this to me looks very similar to the Strubog I own, right? Like it was actually in fact very similar just from the pictures, but we found that out after it was made. Like took reference photos from my gun afterwards and was like, oh, it's actually very close. We don't need to tweak anything really. This is already good, So it's very, very fun to kind of get both sides there.
and actually get that experience. Marty McFly says, also just saying your animations are partially responsible for me picking up the Galley Ace 22N on a whim at an auction. Lol. Do you only animate using keyframes and Bezier curves, or do you use live reference / mocap?
I'm glad to hear that. That's a nice gun. I actually haven't tried the Galil Ace myself yet, so I'm excited to finally get my hands on one when I can. And in terms of the animation, yeah, we do use mocap where mocap is typically used for third-person stuff. So let's say that we're making our running, sprinting, climbing ladders, or vaulting, or whatever. All of that stuff would be mocapped, and it's a very different kind of workflow than from what I'm doing here, which is, yes, in theory, you could use reference. I'm using some reference of me handling the guns. But I would say it's like maybe 60%, and the rest is just like you're following a certain set of, let's call it like a stylistic guide from other games, right? Like, we have talked about this in the last live stream where we talked about Modern Warfare's influence on what our animations look like, and also the Insurgency Sandstorm animations have their own influence. All of that stuff is not strictly realistic. It's more about having a certain stylistic thing and an exaggeration to the animations. And in first-person animation especially, I would say it's a considerable amount of just like exaggeration and using those tricks, so to speak, like you use other games as reference to understand what they did. And then the little bit extra is just like you can see how fast you move the magazine in real life. You can see what direction generally the gun moves in when you put the magazine in, but it's really gonna be too stiff. Like typically you want to almost exaggerate it twice as much as it would move in real life. And yeah, it's very weird why it's that way, but it's also kind of, it makes sense when you start thinking about why animation in general is the way it is in pretty much fighting games, for example, have their own exaggeration. Movies had their own exaggeration in some ways, going all the way back to like silent films when you had only body language and very poor quality pictures, right? So you had to act and overact. Theaters back in the day had the same thing where you had to act way more just because people in the back row had to see it, and so on, right? Like all of this comes back to a tradition of just having to exaggerate what they're doing in order for it to read well, which is all terms that would just, yeah, it doesn't have strict realism in mind at that point.
I see. So that's very interesting to hear that like exaggeration is what's part of selling the animation. But what is the line between exaggerating so it feels like it has impact versus like breaking the immersion? Because I guess everything always has its own bar for immersion. Even like I don't know. You ever play Sunset Overdrive?
I don't think I tried that. No, but it's also. No, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
It's probably one of my favorite games from the Xbox One era to come out of Microsoft, but it's like really exaggerated over the top, but it builds its kind of own cohesive universe. So even if it is exaggerated over the top, you still kind of believe it as a aesthetic of its respective universe.
Yeah, I see. No, yeah, definitely. Like that's the same thing that we're talking about here, where it all depends of the style. Of course, like the closer you get to realism, the less exaggeration you will get. And there's an interesting quote from one of the Modern Warfare animators, which is like, they just try to make one-to-one animations from reference, basically, because they wanted to go away from the exaggerated kind of style Battlefield, Insurgency Sandstorm, all the games before them had done. And they still ended up having so much exaggeration and camera movement and exaggerated roll. It just probably if I was a fly on the wall in Infinity Ward at that time, I would guess that they just saw that, well, yeah, it looks one-to-one, but it doesn't feel right. We need to exaggerate something. And then they started getting new things like the way that they exaggerated the head camera, for example, just to get something that feels good. And then there's a video from the lead animator at the time saying the same thing, like, yeah, we did the shotgun this way and that way, and it felt good when we did it this way, and that's why we kept it. So it was like he talked about feeling the animations more so than, yeah, that's exactly the reference that we gathered when we went shooting that shotgun. Like, that wasn't even something he mentioned. So I think that's kind of the thing that you get to, where it's like it stops at a point with realism, and then you exaggerate to the point where it feels good. And then that's kind of what dictates what the animation is going to look like in the end.
I didn't know you had like a little small following of people who like track your progress. Ficorrect says every game Anders worked on is a game I kept my eye on. He has on Beautiful Light 2. Lol. Yeah, I didn't know you had animation groupies following your every progress.
Well, thank you, Firecrest. Yeah, no, it's very exciting there as well. Like, as my side job, pretty much like my weekend job is animating for Deep Worlds, and I'm also trying to like expand my skill set, so to speak. There, trying to learn new things, and well, I'm definitely not fully learned. There's so much more to learn. The concepts are just baffling to me. Yeah.
Eternal Interactive asks, hey, I'm facing problems with textures. Is there a fix? My graphic settings are set to ultra, but I get very low graphics and the textures are rainbows. Is there any way to fix that? Eternal, my recommendation would be to pop in the Discord. If you want, I can include a link in the YouTube channel. There is a bug report section, so we definitely love for as many of you guys to report bugs. We have a much more robust Q&A section than ever before. So we're better equipped to deal and handle with bugs. But my best recommendation would be to go to the bug reporting, because we want to know any issues. We want everyone to be able to play the game effectively and as efficiently as possible. So go there and let us know what your issue is.
Yes,
that would be
I agree.
my recommendation.
I think I even know that bug. Yeah, I have seen that bug. It's very annoying.
Yeah, I mean,
yes,
I think
definitely. Go post it and we'll
definitely look at it. I feel like this update's definitely been more stable than previous ones, but that is probably the nightmare of just like making games in this modern era. There's just so many variables, so many different things going on, so many different people with different specs. I don't know. Has there been a game that's released without any kind of like issues nowadays?
without issues? Oh, that sounds like magic to me.
Yeah,
it's always issues, right? But it's all about trying to solve them in the right manner. Like you said, we actually had more people, or actually people in general, coming into our QA at this point for this update, and now we have a much more proper QA section. Like before, we usually had to do the QA ourselves while also animating and also doing other things, right? So at this point, yeah, we definitely want to fix all the bugs, and it's just going to be typical thing like, yeah, we add more features, more content, and with that, there's more bugs. And every time we fix bugs, there's like just piling on more as we produce more stuff, which is like super annoying to us as well. But it's just the way that game works until it's more or less complete, and then we finish all, or pretty much all, the bug fixing. And then finally, it's hopefully going to be something that's super bug-free or close to bug-free.
When you run into an issue, just remind yourself that's why it's not on consoles yet. You got to have everything built and set up before you can start that. Losing Sanity asks, aside from caliber, is there any other way guns calculate the damage dealt? Oh, never mind. Is this the right place to ask this question? I feel like that's more of a programming question, but considering you are the gun guy, is there any insight to that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, we talk about the damage and the way the bullets work and all that stuff internally all the time. And it's damage. There's supposed to be bullet speed. I'm not really sure if it works. There's also penetration, which I'm not really sure if it works yet. The way it's supposed to work is like realistic, right? Like, you take a big bullet, for example, that has a slow speed, but it has a big mass. That means it's not going to go through body armor, but it's still going to have a certain amount of energy, right? So it's still going to cause damage. But it depends on what kind of target or enemy that you're fighting, right? So if you're shooting, for example, with a shotgun, that's probably going to be very good against the fleshy targets. If you use something that's a very small, fast bullet, like the AK-74M or the M4 or Mark 18 in our game, anything like that would be more purposely good for armor penetration, even in some cases we started talking about if we would have armor-piercing bullets or if that's beyond the scope of the game. Like, yes, we do talk about it quite a bit. Right now it's just more what feels roughly balanced and fun in PvP and in co-op, like against AI. And we set it to a rough number. We tweak it a little bit every update. Yeah, it's just like a constant tweaking game at this point. I think it's going to be pretty good at the end when we have all the features, everything that we want from ballistics. Like if we have shorter barrels, for example, that's going to mean less damage, but it's not because it's less damage. It's actually because it's less velocity. Nerdy talk, I'm sorry. It's basically just, yes, we do want to make it right. It just takes time because we don't have all the features in yet.
Yeah, I love that great detailed breakdown about how gun damage is calculated and what's the difference between, like, you know, Call of Duty gun damage versus like 5K's gun damage, which is supposed to be a little bit more tactical.
Eventually, yes, definitely.
There was an interesting question. I saw videos about SCP-5K being on VR. Is that a mod or is it officially supported? As of right now, it is not officially supported. Some people have made mods to make it playable in VR.
Yeah, is it like Steam VR, I think?
I think so. Someone has like got it to work with Steam VR, but that's not an officially supported thing. It looks great in VR, but I feel like out of all the things that are on the team's priority list, VR unfortunately is like on the lowest one. Just because, I mean, how many VR headsets are out there in the wild? How many people own them?
Like in the team, you mean, or in general?
Just in general, because like for the longest of time, it's like PC VR, Meta VR. Oh my god, PS VR. They're so amazing. Got to play Beat Saber, but I have never encountered any or like met anyone in real life who owns a VR headset. So you know, I'm just wondering, like, is there like 2 million out there or 3 million VR headsets?
A good question. I mean, personally, I have planned to buy a VR headset, but it's I think it's gonna be typically like in, you know, like every other year, it's gonna go up and down a little bit. And the hype is, of course, real, but it's also the fact that the technology is not quite there. I think, like, it's the games I played, at least, it's been the experience that yes, this is cool tech. I would want this to develop a little bit further before I, for example, get like a super nice tactical shooter, because it's like the graphics might not be the best, or I don't even know. Like, it just depends on what kind of game. I guess, like, I had great VR experiences, but they're also kind of like, they need to develop to a certain point before they're actually immersive. You know, like really, really nice graphics, for example, is something I would like to see. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Someone was kind enough to provide some stats. The Quest series has cumulatively shipped more than 20 million units as of Q1 2023, and the Quest 2 contributing 18 million units. The Quest 2 continues to sell relatively well and to maintain its momentum as Meta is making the headset more affordable by lowering its prices after last year's price increase. Really? That's a lot of headsets. Are they just like hiding somewhere? Where are these people who have like $600 or $800 to blow on a? To me, like VR headsets are not gonna like really blow up until someone can make like a $200 or $150 headset. And I also think that the thing that like kind of makes like VR hard is like, you can have a communal experience when you're like playing on a computer or playing on a console on a television. Someone else can like kind of like watch and see what you're doing, right? And I feel like VR, it's just limited to one person. It's not as easy to share that, which I feel like is like on a social level a little bit more unappealing than just like even watching someone play like I don't know, a Call of Duty game is still visually interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely like a lot of different things I guess could contribute to why it's not as popular yet, but hey, we never know. Like, might be something that's really, developed in like 10 years, for example, where we could potentially talk about doing a VR game. I know for a fact that many people in the team like VR quite a bit and would be very interested in getting on that at some point. Like Afraid making a VR game. I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but it would be very cool.
I'll just say this: if anyone has a billionaire uncle out there or a billionaire father, just drop a few fat stacks, and we'll make that happen. And any problem in the future can be solved with more money. Or have your billionaire uncle like buy a billion or a couple million t-shirts and sweaters or the Christmas sweater, and then we'll see what we can do. All features could be solved with money. So Mighty McFly asks, hypothetical, you're in Area 12 raid, you can have any weapon with a combination of attachments, whether in-game or not, what would you take? So I assume this is like, this is real life, what would you go into Area 12 with? What attachments and weapons would you bring?
So honestly, if we're talking about like realistically, then most people these days use an AR-15, right? Like in some sort of configuration, probably short barrel because it's all CQB in there. I do like my different like combination scopes, like at least for competition shooting, I use canted sights like we do in our game, and ACOGs are pretty nice, just because they're a little bit lighter than LPVOs, for example. So yeah, maybe something like that. Just something that would work, I think, is like the main thing. In the game, of course, like it's a very different thing. Like games are supposed to be fun. It doesn't need to be like super realistic. So yeah, I guess it depends on the mood of the day. I do keep changing my guns when I play, and often it's just based on whatever is fun, what sounds nice, what feels nice to play with. Yeah. So it's perhaps like the best gun in the game, probably Mark 18 still. Like it's pretty nice, it's pretty short, it's good damage, good fire rates. Yeah, I'd say that Mark 18 with some sort of configuration of combination optics, maybe suppressor if the AI is still, or in the future at least, like able or not able to pinpoint you as much if you use a suppressor. Something like that, yeah.
Sounds like a good loadout. Mr. Glitch asks, finally, a stream that is happening when it's day. It's funny because I figured like a day stream during the weekday wouldn't be great for most of you because like you're at work or school or whatever. I have no idea if that would be more successful. I know it's a little bit more difficult for me to run since my setup is at home. But I'm glad we were able to make this work for you. But he also asks, what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate. Boring.
I'm a fan of chocolate chip cookie dough myself. I think it's really good.
That is good though. Yeah, no, I agreed.
And we also have, he asks, what was the question? It was a good one. All right. So it wasn't from him, but I'm glad you're in Europe. I hope you will consider coming maybe for another Saturday morning cartoon night day. That's what I kind of ran it for the European people. But Adam Vale asks, in your opinion, what makes a gun feel fun in a video game?
I think it's a combination of the visual and the sounds. Honestly, it could be that a really nice animated gun, for example, doesn't feel fun because it's too low damage or the recoil is wrong. Yeah, it's basically a combination of everything. Like in our game, for example, we still tweak a lot of stuff just because it's like, yeah, it feels kind of good. Yes, we all kind of feel that we're going in the right direction, but we always feel, how can we make this better? Like we play with it and we put our like critical minds to work and we say, okay, so how could we make the recoil better? Like, could we tweak it some? Is it animation? Is it like the camera shake? What about the sounds? Can we tweak those further? They're really good, but maybe there's something we can do with the mixing or make some sort of change to the mech layer or yeah. So all of that stuff is constantly changing. Like that's what feels good to me, is like when all of the small thing hits together. And in our game, it's basically just continuously getting tweaked because of that kind of question. Like, what does feel good, right? If it doesn't feel good, it's probably something like combination of the sound or the animation or the position on screen with something. So yeah, it needs to be like every gun in the game needs to feel good in some way, being a small revolver or big caliber 308 rifle. And then we just try to figure out why that is.
Yeah, it's always interesting, like what makes gunplay feel good versus like when it doesn't feel good. Like I don't know if you remember. You remember back in the day in like the PS2, GameCube era, they had this sequel to GoldenEye, called like GoldenEye Rogue Agent. It was like basically kind of like using the brand name of GoldenEye, but even though it wasn't related to like the N64 GoldenEye.
Exactly. I remember like playing, I think it was Nightfire that was my favorite because I had the PS2, where that felt so good because of the sounds I remember, like the sound of the different guns. My God, it was nice. Just listening to the gunshots like was my thing. Just, oh, it's so nice. I want to shoot this gun more because it sounds so cool.
The reason I brought up
It doesn't even sound realistic, right? It just sounds nice.
The reason I brought up that game, the GoldenEye game, Rogue Agent, that nobody remembers, is because like if I were to like pick the ultimate middle of the road kind of mediocre game, that is the game. That is the game that is just kind of like the definition of mid. So so I guess like if you had to pick like 4 or 5 things, what makes the difference between like kind of like a mid like shooting game versus like a shooting game where the guns feel like that silky smooth fires the neurons just right?
Yeah. Wait, what was the question? So, like a good game that had that or not?
Oh no, the answer was like what separates the mid from like the really good ones? Do you think it's just sound?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's probably combination, right? Like if it's a really good sound, but then it kind of lacks on animation, for example. Yeah, it might be mid at that point, right? Like you have something that kind of equals out, so to speak, like the textures in, for example, let's say Rainbow Six Vegas 2 is something I also played quite a bit, and I always I wanted it to be good, but I also felt like those guns look too gray, and I want to mod, like if I was able to mod that game, I would just make them like black because they felt too gray and they felt too low resolution even at that time. The sounds were pretty damn good though. Animations I felt was pretty spot on. So yeah, it was like, as you say, it was pretty mid because of the textures and the models, in my opinion there.
Mr. Glitch asks, will SCP-127, the living gun, be in the game?
Oh, even though it's gun related, I don't know. Like, typically the stuff we talk about in terms of guns is, well, we can say that it's at least changing all the time, right? Like we're trying to figure out new guns to have, and we are talking about like different types of SCP guns and trying to figure out what would be viable. I guess that's pretty much all I can say. Like we don't really have any like information on what specific guns that would be, but it would certainly be interesting, right? Like myself, I'm just learning about SCP as we're working on this game, and it does sound pretty cool to have something that's not just like a realistic gun, but something that would be, let's say that we had like a Gauss rifle, which is like a electromagnetic thing that you had to kind of wind up or change batteries. Like, why not? It's a thing. It does exist. Within reason, it could be something you could use. And of course, it would be pretty bad because it takes a long time to reload. But still, like, why not? And they're SCP guns as well. Like, if they're some sort of grounded realism like the rest of the game, sure, why not, right?
Saul asks, you guys remember Black from the PS2 Xbox? That game went all in with making the guns meaty. Maybe a bit too much, but it was fun. I remember that game was like pushed forward. It's like, this is the ultimate in gun gaming of the PS2 Xbox era.
Oh, yeah. No, I do remember that game. Yeah, I liked it.
Bill Microsoft says, COD World War II was really mid in terms of sound and animations. Do you prefer the P90 or the MP7?
So in that game, Oh wait, so that's two different questions. Yeah, because in that game I remember, like I liked like the overall like cinematics and the lighting looks pretty good and everything, but I didn't really get a feel for the gameplay. So yeah, honestly, in terms of the P90 MP7 discussion, maybe P90 because it's just more or less the same as MP7, but 10 more rounds. So yeah, just more ammo is always nice, and the reload speed is about the same, more or less. Yeah.
There you have it, a definitive statement about which one of those weapons is more appealing. We also have a question from Sunki Side Up. How in depth is customization planned to be for guns? Could we, for instance, change the barrel length, stock, etc. in the future alongside attachments?
I don't know. Like, it's possible, but at the same time, I don't think it's within the scope of this game. Like, it would be something like, okay, so what would the reason be, right? Like, we're, for example, making modding a thing in our game, and I would certainly like to see myself and the other guys from ISMC do something like that, where we just make a lot of guns, like variations of the AR-15, for example, just because it's cool. And we do have a setup where the animations would actually allow it. Like, you could just change a few poses and it would work with more or less the same animations, which is, again, something that is... It basically makes it very easy to do that, even if we weren't to do it ourselves. Because, again, that would mean like we're just adding a bunch of customization just for the aesthetic of it, which may or may not be something that the studio as a whole want to do. But it's possible, yes, and it's certainly something that I would like to do just because I personally think it's fun, right? Like, I was, again, part of that ISMC mod where we had how many different stocks and barrel lengths and hand guards on the same AR-15 base. It's like, there's no reason for it, it's just fun. It's like playing The Sims, you know? Like, you're just making the wall 10 different colors and change the, you know, tapestry or whatever, like whatever, because it's fun. It doesn't make any sort of difference to the game, right? So it's that kind of thinking.
Well, good thoughts. Oh my God! Just looking at it, someone also asked, "Are you working in Blender right now?" Yeah, I think it does say. Or does it say Blender, or is this another program?
No, this is Blender, yeah. We're working in Blender 4.1.0 right now.
Normal Guy 45 asks, if calibers are going to be different, will there be a certain sections in the game where wall bangs will be needed? Like if you have to hit a fuse box through some wood or a weak brick wall?
Huh. I mean, it sounds interesting. Like, I guess the main concern, if we're talking like theoretically how that would work, as long as people understand that they're supposed to do that, right? Like, sure, why not? Like the idea. Sounds like a cool thing to do.
Well, I forget. The two new SCPs that are in the game, are they in all chapters, or are they just only in chapter 3?
I don't know, because as far as I know, like, we worked on it in the animation department, and our part of that was just like, okay, can we make them as good as we possibly can right now, and then elaborate on it further. So yeah, maybe it is in just chapter 3, but I'm imagining like it would just expand into other areas, and it will also expand in the way that those SCP function, right? Like, make them more varied in their attacks, make them more interesting in their behaviors, and so on. Like, all of that stuff is like constantly changing and developing.
Yeah, so I hope we get some chicken men to scare you. I think the most fun is when you can fight them in wave survival. That's what I'm looking forward to, because they seem like they're just like really beefy, potentially tanky enemies. And plus it adds more variety. That is the key of enemy variety. By any chance, do you ever play Gears of War back in the day?
Oh no, sadly not. I did miss that, and I do want to play it at some point just for the story. Like, I've seen like basically like the, what do you call them,
The
where you just
cutscenes.
see like the cinematics. Yeah, I'd like the cutscene, like the story through and through, and it was amazing. Yeah.
I'd recommend
Ooh.
it. But like Gears of War is famous for like kind of like popularizing, wave survival horde modes. And some people asking like, why don't you have wave survival in the first game? And they're like, well, there's not enough enemy variety to like make it interesting. The first game only had like a few archetypes, while the second game kind of goes wild by introducing all these other kind of weird variety of enemies. And then the third game, oh my god, the third game has so many different enemy. It's kind of amazing how much stuff they stuff in there. But the more SCPs that get in there, the better wave survival will eventually become.
Yeah, exactly. Good enemies with a lot of variations and basically just more of them. Like games like Left 4 Dead, for example, comes to mind, where like if you just had the regular zombies, it wouldn't be as much fun as specific ones that you get to like figure out and how to fight. I do also want to speak to the reload thing with the speed loaders for the revolvers. They are animated. They have been animated for some time. They will get into the game. And yes, they are definitely planned. Like I did personally spend quite a bit of time just getting the speed loader thing looking good and everything. So it will be, something that you can do. It's going to be an interesting thing as well, where the way that it would work realistically, right? Like the reason why we have, as you guys say, every bullet coming out because you're dropping everything and then starting over, is that some of the people we have on our let's call it like a military kind of expertise team, they said that, okay, so let's talk about how the weight of the bullet is when you try to extract them, right? Because what's going to happen is that you're extracting the more heavy bullets first, like the actual unspent ones, because they don't get stuck. While the spent casings, the one that you actually shot, those would get stuck more because they're expanding a little bit. And by the definition of that, it's going to be very hard to just get the spent casings out. So it's actually easier and faster just to get everything out, clear the whole thing, then start over. And as you guys say, that means that, you do that and then you just use your speed loaders. So what I would like, at least, is that the speed loaders is a thing that you keep. You don't really throw them away. And when you have time, you could put more bullets into those speed loaders because you have a certain amount of them. And that's the way that you would kind of handle revolver ammunition in general, right? Like you have your speed loaders, you use them when you're in a pickle, basically. Like you probably double tap R, let's say, or something like that, or some sort of system where it makes sense to use the speed loader because you want to reload super fast. And then finally you get your single bullets because that's all you have left. You have spent all your loaders and you would need to kind of start fresh with those speed loaders, or fill them somehow, or So that's kind of the thing I'm thinking about when I think speed loaders and the way that you load and unload the revolver right now. Just some logical way to not just say, hey, you have infinite speed loaders, the whole single bullet system is just gone. No. Combine them,
Well said. I did not know that there was that like in-depth philosophy towards speed loaders and the ethics of the speed loading animations. Adam Vale.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry.
When we're talking about like speed loaders, just to kind of clarify the situation there, what I'm talking about is that when you have a certain amount of them, it's like having magazines, right? So for you guys that probably don't know or don't have that much knowledge about like what that is, it would mean that you would have your set of magazines, and then in theory you would just have those extra that you fill up. Like you have still the bullet thing, and then just let's say 6 speed loaders, and those you keep, and those are empty, and those need to be filled again. Yeah.
A Valkyrie 733 on YouTube says, Jesus Christ, you have all the bullets in the magazine rigged? You using some kind of those parameters to make them move or disappear based on ammo left? That's crazy, lol. I've seen other games that make it effectively de-render the top bullets when the magazine is empty. Is that accurate, or are all the bullets like basically kind of rigged?
Yeah, they are. So it depends on what kind of magazine, because of course you want to get away with the least amount of bullets possible, because bullets means mesh, which means performance, draw calls, not good, So basically for a non-transparent magazine, like let's say the M4 magazine in the game, I think it has maybe 4, maybe 3 bullets, something like that. And then after that, you don't really see them anyway, so we don't have them. for the Stribog, there's a transparent 30-round magazines. There is, in fact, 30 rounds of bullets down here with every single bullet being rigged to a bone. They don't move. What you do instead is that you hide, like you said, you hide 1, 2, 3, 4 from the bottom, or 30, 29, 28, so on. And then we also have something that's not in the update right now. It's going to come soon, which is that we're working on the spring, like we have in the P90, to move on basically like, every bullet. So it will sit against bullet number 27, and it will sit against bullet number 12, right? And it's going to be exact. So we have some shape keys. For those of you guys who don't know what that means, it's basically like you can have a sort of animation on the model itself that you can draw from in game. So it means that you, for example, can have your bullets like, okay, we have disappeared 10 bullets. That means we're going to be on this amount of shape key, like a percentage of shape key. And that means that you see the follower and the spring actually expanding all the way up. So it's going to be very cool. This, the AUG, this of war, I think maybe, SG553, yes, it's going to have it. So yeah, basically just, it's a system that is certainly going to be visible to the people that actually really want to pay attention to that kind of stuff, yeah.
Stop me if I've already asked this, but how do you ensure that each gun feels substantially unique? Does each gun in the game have something that makes it special to you? Did I already ask that, or is that fresh?
I think that's fresh. I would say it depends on the general consensus I hear from my friends in real life that shoot those guns, if that makes sense. Like you, for example, have, let's say, the UMP45, which is considered a nice gun, sure. It's like the MP5 in many ways. It's a bigger caliber, but it's still the same manufacturer. The big difference is that it's lighter, which means that it's going to jump up and down a bit more. It's a heavy bolt that goes back and forth. So it's going to feel, like you say, different from the MP5 in the recoil. Basically, like it's going to jump a little more. It's going to be a little more chugging, if that's a word that we can use for the recoil. While the MP5 is more like a short snap, like a nice little push. The MP5s I shot, at least, they feel a little springy, I would say. Like it's just a little like dying, and that kind of feels like pushy as well. But it's very little recoil, like very, very little. That's also kind of, like that's how you make them feel different. You talk to people that have generally used those guns a bit, and you try to figure out the consensus of what that gun should feel like. What is that gun like to use?
Crosby says, gun animation so good in the game. Please convey my admiration to the animator. Yes. Thank you, Crosby, for your love to Andres' work.
Thank you. And also Albarni and Groovecat and Vren, who worked here earlier as well, where it's mostly me these days, but we did used to have a quite nice little animation team when we were producing like on top of the priority list, so to speak. Now it's more like maintenance, adding a few new guns, but yeah, thank you, and conveying that to the other people as well.
It'd be funny if Al Barney, like, every now and then he does pop in here, although he always likes to kind of like be like a silent benefactor. Personally, I always like the hype and energy of the WWE entrance whenever like an Afraid developer pops in to one of these streams, and of course you're all welcome. I always love impromptu guests, but sometimes they're like, I don't necessarily need the WWE entrance, and I'm like, all right, fine, you're ruining my fun.
Yes, they do.
But it's nice. I didn't know that Al Barney also did animations. He really is like the Swiss Army knife of a developer.
Oh yeah, no, he taught me a lot of stuff, and for the longest time we worked together on pretty much all the animations, and we still do in some regards. Where, yes, I do like the lion's share of the work, but then we're still like tweaking stuff together and talking about how we want to change stuff. Make new systems. So it's quite a bit of like back and forth between programming, Albarni specifically, and animation, because that's kind of how we need to develop. Like if I'm only sitting here by myself, figuring out stuff, I'm not going to learn as much as if we're actually doing it together, which is kind of nice.
Valkyries asks, on speaking of the P90, do you guys think you'll ever have the classic 90s P90 sight configuration, the integrated red dot sight? It's so iconic.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't say that we want. Maybe like it just depends on, yeah, like any other kind of, let's say like configuration of, for example, the MP7 with the A1, what do you call it, like the pistol grip in front, no, the front grip basically. Like, yeah, stuff like that I would definitely like to see. We just need to figure out if we have the time, when we're gonna do it. Yeah, it's like one of those things. M4A1, right? Like we do have a Mark 18, but still would be nice to have small differences.
Always good. It's nice to see that more people are piling in. Who knew that noon time was a great time to host a live stream on Saturday, at least for the Eastern times. Although I last few streams we had an issue where like with the monetization, but I think super chats are enabled. This will probably be the first and only time I hawk it. But if any of you would like to have some super chat hype to show your appreciation, that would be amazing. Donate to Piper's McDonald's funds. But that is up to you. I will not try and push for that too much, but it was a nice surprise. Some of the previous streams where we got those. General Obsesius asks, thoughts about adding in double barrel rip and tear? Lol.
Like a shotgun?
Yeah, exactly, like a double barreled shotgun.
I mean, I do remember us talking about having guns that wouldn't necessarily like be tactical, or like, let's say like you add some sort of wooden AK or FAL or whatever, or a hunting rifle, or indeed like a double barrel shotgun. Like, it would make sense if we had, let's say, a DLC, right? Like where you basically get stuck in some village, and then that's all you have. That's all you get. So yeah, I would like to see it in the right context, I would say.
Valkyrie asks, kind of unrelated to the animation side of the game, do you guys think you'll ever release song used in the recent trailer? I love it so much. There is a lot of like really cool music that is produced in the game. In the game, it's amazing how much awesome soundtracks there are. I think I forget if it's like eventually they're going to release a soundtrack, but I think there will be like a way to like get all the music. I think there are. That's one of the easier things to do.
Yeah, no, of course, the sound department would be the people to ask there, but definitely.
And also let me know if Captain Crunch, my bird, is being too noisy. He is piping up in the background. So far, every time I bring it up, everyone's like, nah, fine, let the bird be. But I just want to make sure that he's not too disruptive for you fine folks. So, of course, let me know. Losing Sanity asks, will we be able to sort our magazines? For example, when you use a gun workbench for mags, get sorted.
That's a good question. Like, we have talked about ways of doing that, and to give some clarification to what that means, is like, right now we have like this cycle of magazines. So if you were, for example, shooting half full magazines for the 3 first magazines, they would just stay in that cycle. So you have like half magazines that you have to kind of reload through 3 times before you actually get to, well, it depends on how full the magazine is, but it's basically just like pushing stuff around in a way that may or may not be so liked, so to speak. So yeah, I would also like to see a revamp of just how we deal with magazines and how they're like moved around, and if we can indeed sort them a little bit, or just have like different, like, let's say that you're mag checking and then you can kind of pick which magazine you're gonna reload. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, definitely something, if possible, it would be just rethinking how we deal with that and how we can actually get some cool features from, let's say that you have very little ammo in general, and that's just kind of part of that experience. It all depends also on how that moves, in which direction that moves.
DDox asks, think something interesting would be makeshift weapons for the Class D faction in mind. We could pick up and use as well. So that brings up an interesting question. I don't know if there are plans for something like that, but like let's say you were kind of like for the D class faction, they started to use like 2 or 3 makeshift jury rigged weapons. How would you go about animating and creating those to kind of like sell their improv nature?
So the way I see it, at least when we're talking about makeshift like weapons as melee weapons, it would be very cool, right? Like you could just duct tape something together, or have like different basically like let's say prison weapons. That would be kind of cool. And then in terms of weapons as in firearms would be, yeah, I don't know, like it would be kind of cool to see at least some sort of skin or like modification done to it that's not, hazardous to the end user, right? Like that's the typical thing that you see in, like, say, Fallout or something, where it's like, would that actually be safe to use? Because that's kind of the first thing about firearms, is that no point having a firearm if it's gonna explode in your hands. So yeah, it would be very cool, and it would just need to be something that would make sense, right? It wouldn't be like a rusty thing that's like duct taped together and it just blows up in your face. Like, yeah, it would be fun, but it wouldn't be realistic, or maybe, yeah, serve the purpose it's supposed to.
Normal Guy 45 asks, will there be areas where players can use static weaponry like an M2, or even carry the parts for said static weapons so that weapons can be mounted on certain stronghold points?
It does sound cool, but maybe not for this game, because again, this game seems to be more so in the kind of CQB environment in general. And something like that would be very cool if we were, for example, a mill sim, or if we had more outdoors maps, like if we had long treks where we just walk for like 10 kilometers and then set up to fire a shot at one little group of people. Like that's kind of, again, Arma or something like that, right? In our game, that would just be, it would be cool, and it would be an interesting game mechanic, but it would also kind of clutter the speed of the game, I would say, right? Like it's slow, but it's not so slow that it would make much sense to sit down and build like a fortress in the middle of the map. At least not in the way the game is right now, I would say.
Ah. So I feel like you already addressed this. Someone was saying that they really wanted to hear this question answered. Stop me if you've heard this one or already kind of addressed it. Will we ever get stage reloads like in Ground Branch? Even Helldivers 2 has it now. A game not really known for its guns. Stage reload, as in if you interrupt the reload, it actually gets canceled and you'll have to start from the point you ended. 6 Days in Fallujah also has a mechanic where you automatically reload if you have 0 bullets while checking your magazine. Is that something that you already answered?
No, well, we talked a little bit about it, but I would certainly like to talk about what that would kind of entail, right? Because yes, I do like the idea of stage reloads. In my mind, it's a cool mechanic. It's something, especially when we're talking about when you're able to just do stuff like Didox is saying, like you can sprint, wall to whatever while reloading. Taking some of that out is certainly going to cause a really nice kind of immersion, right? Like sometimes you actually have to plan before you start the reload, and you could also stop reloading and switch to your pistol. In Surge Sandstorm, for example, that's a thing where their animation speed, like the reloads, are so slow that it makes a lot of sense to have stage reloads, because it just takes 100 years to reload. So it's like, yeah, spend the first 25 years and then you go do something else, and then spend the next 25 years doing the final part of the reload. in our game, it's kind of fast. So I think it's going to be something that would be cool. Yes, I do want to have it at some point. I think we will. And it also will be something that needs to just be catered to our thing. Like, if you, for example, have no more reloading while sprinting, that could be a really nice place to have it. Or if we do have, let's say, if you go prone, that it interrupts the reload if we do have prone, right? So it's all based on context of what would that mean. The animations themselves, yes, absolutely. We could definitely do something like that. We do know how we would do it if we were to do it. It just depends on kind of what direction that would go, again, with the design of the game.
So there you go. I hope that scratches that reload animation question itch you were having. Mr. Glitch asks, have you ever played SCP Containment Breach?
I have not, unfortunately. I do need to try more games. Like, I just don't have enough time to play games, which is kind of sad.
I guess
I did. Yeah.
That's the curse of when you start making games, is it kind of sucks away your free time for the ability to play them.
Exactly. I basically have like a bucket list of games I do want to play. I still haven't played all the way through Baldur's Gate 3. I tried for like a year now to actually get the time, which is super annoying. And yeah, when I eventually get the time, I will get to that and also try other SCP games.
Well, it's funny though. I got like for free Fallout 76 recently because it was like on Amazon Prime, and I was finally got to try that out. Which is kind of scratching that Fallout itch. Although I guess, did you ever like? What did you think of the gun animations of like the Bethesda games like Fallout 3 and 4? Were they any good, or do you think they were like more, kind of concentrated on feeling more accurate RPGs than like a dedicated shooter game like Call of Duty?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like what you typically see in games where they go for more like a stylistic thing is that, yeah, you don't really have necessarily like the most realistic reloads, but they do their job absolutely fine, and they do fit the universe, and they do fit like the overall style of the game. Even like the running animations and so on is like, yeah. And I do play or have played quite a bit of like this Fallout 4 tactical shooter modding scene kind of thing, where you just take all of those mods into Fallout 4 and try to make it into like a tactical shooter with really, really good animations. And even then, there's like, let's say, for example, the fire animations don't really go, or the system around the fire animation, I would say, doesn't really go well with that kind of thing. So yeah, they're nice for what they are, but they're not like tactical shooter animations, and they kind of fall short when you try to do that. If you try to make them into like, let's say, like Modern Warfare animations side by side with them, it's like, ooh, that's a big difference. Same with Far Cry games, for example. They look damn nice, but their animations are still very stylized, or not really like the same style as the more recent Modern Warfare games. So yeah, very nice for what they are.
Normal guy 45 asks, Insurgency Sandstorm also has the mechanic where you can reload mags normally, or speed load mags where the current mags get fully discarded no matter how many bullets are left. Doesn't this already exist in SCP 5K, or is it currently in development? Sorry for the ping.
Yeah, no, that's doesn't exist. What we talked about earlier in this live stream is that fast reloads, which is the term that most people use for that, is that we do want to have that. It's also just depending on how long we have to wait until we actually can get to a point where that's a viable thing to develop, because it's not only animation, it's also all of the other stuff where you basically take your, let's say, a physical magazine, it drops to the ground, it has to exist as a entity in the game. All of that stuff is like programming, basically. The animation itself, yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't take but a minute to make new like speed animations for all of the guns and implement it. It's a very cool feature that we do want to have, and it takes time away from programming, and therefore it needs to be done later. Like, I really want to do it as soon as possible, though. It would be damn cool.
That's actually a really good question. Losing Sanity asks, what are the rules for pinging devs and mods? I feel like pinging mods, you can do it infinitely. That's kind of our purpose. Although I don't know if I'd call myself a mod, but I've definitely served mod functions. I would not recommend pinging devs so much, just because they've got work to do, and you don't want to kind of abuse their attention. So that's not something I'd recommend unless you want to like in an event like this, and you want to have your question reach the front. Maybe then, if you wanted to ping Anders, maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world if you have a really pressing gun or reload animation question. But go wild with me in social, especially if it's something important. But try and be tactful and not abuse it. That sound about right? Or is there like a policy that the Affray Discord had before my time about pinging devs?
No, that sounds about right. And of course, occasional people do have pressing questions, and I do enjoy helping if I can, if it's like related to the work I do, and I can indeed be of help to someone. But it's it just depends. Like I had servers where it's just a lot of pings. Like sometimes you just have to go back and work, and you can't really do something about it. Or sometimes you have to have those rules, as you say. Like maybe you can have pings, but it's just like not so clear that you're gonna answer it, right? Like maybe you will answer it when you have the time, maybe not. So it might just well be, as long as it's like related to our work, especially for me. Yeah, I'm happy to be pinged, and yeah, when I can, I will answer.
So there you have it. If you have crucial gun-related things, Andrew is more open to pings. But if you have a spicy meme that you just have to share, then maybe show some discretion. Lieutenant Bean asks, I noticed that there was no longer animations for inspecting guns. Has this been temporarily disabled or anything?
No, that was a bug. Yeah. So on my end, when I was sitting here doing inspect for example, the SG553, it was like, yeah, looks good. I'm ready. And then it didn't appear in the game, which is unfortunate, and it will be fixed as far as I know. That is not intended. So I'm very excited for you to see the actual inspects for those guns as well.
And also, I think someone before had asked a really interesting question that kind of slipped my sights. Are there plans for like armor penetration as like a mechanic later on in the future, where like some guards will have more armor and you'll have to like use a different gun or shoot at a different area of their body to sort of deal with their body armor?
Again, I don't really know. I know that we are working on something like yes, but no, right? Like it depends on how the actual system would work, because you don't really want to have something like, for example, in Escape from Tarkov, where it's an armor system where it just makes you shoot everyone in the legs, right? Like you want to have something that makes for a really good armor system where it actually makes sense, and it's making it fun because you choose, like you say, the right gun for the job, and if you pick the wrong tool, you may have some problems, but then you wouldn't really have problems because you just shoot them in the areas that they don't have armor. So it's a very hard thing to do. Good armor system is just so yeah, definitely, but at the same time, I'm not really sure. I can't really answer how that would be done and exactly what that would look like.
A very diplomatic answer, if there ever has been one. I'm kind of curious though. What other games do you have on your like kind of like bucket list that are like Baldur's Gate 3 was one? Are there any other games that you kind of like looking to get back into?
Oh yeah, I need to play the new Valheim update when that comes out. I do play a lot of other games that's not like shooters with my fiance and our friends, basically just like, okay, I need to unwind. I was really excited, for example, for Company of Heroes 3 when that came out, and I was super disappointed because me and the sound designer were playing that all the time, which is very, very fun, and it's like something completely different from our day jobs. and yeah, it wasn't as good as 2, to say the least. And yeah, we're still just like playing the old games when we can. You know, Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Like, who plays that still, right? I do. I do enjoy that. But it's like, that's kind of the games I play just to unwind and do something else. I played Hogwarts Legacy. I played through and through like a couple of times. That was pretty nice. Just something else, you know?
That's so funny though that like your preferred games are you're not like getting into like I don't know Rainbow Six Siege or Defiant or whatever the latest COD killer is. You're like I need RTS games, I need RPG games, I need you know something.
Yeah, it's yeah, but it's true. Like, if you do this all the time, like basically my day job is doing animations and textures of guns, and then my hobbies involve like either playing airsoft or doing IPSC competition, or you know, like all of the stuff is like gun related, apart from the band stuff I do, which is like also very different, which is nice when I play guitar. And that's kind of just like having to have some sort of balance, not just do one thing all the time. It's gonna make me crazy.
INH asks, when's the update going to release 0.4 or whatever it's called? Well, I have good news. I guess it is out now. You can go play it. Go rush. Download it. Update the browser. Load up Steam. It is free for you. If you already have the game, go to Antarctica. Go check out Chapter 3 of Area 12. Go fight some chicken men. Go get eaten by a door squid. It is out now! So I certainly hope that answers that question. I am so happy to at least say that like it is available. Go be merry and frolic with the game. What? BRB, nice stream. There you go. I like informing people on the ground that it's actually out versus like it'll be out soon at some point in the future. So what part of the animation are you kind of like specifying here right now? I mean, it is nice to see you able to like work and talk at the same time, but like, what process are you in right now?
So basically, what we're doing right now is the blockout phase, the same as we did when we had the last live stream. We just start off with virtually nothing. Like, I have an idea in my mind, may have some reference. In this case, I actually didn't record any reference footage yet. I might actually do that during the later process of this, where it's just like, okay, where do I want to actually have this gun move? And right now, we're just blocking out. Okay, so you're taking the gun. Here it is. Okay, here's the magazine coming out, getting it into the gun, and that's kind of the next step, is to wreck the bolt, or we could have it locked back when we do this, and then pull on the little bolt release lever that's right here. So it's basically just like figuring out as we're going along here what would look the best. In my mind right now, this would be probably just like this, and then it would go to this kind of, let's see here, just pull it around a little bit. Either have it like centered or even turned over like this. We can see into the chamber like that, and then you pull the charging handle with this hand that's currently stuck there. So it's like boop, boop, over there, and then pull back, and you see that the round goes into the chamber, and then you go back to base pose. So it's like just making all of this make sense in the very, very basic state it is right now.
If you had to give like a percentage, how like close to done is this animation? Or are you still like kind of like in the very early stages?
Oh, very early. I would say maybe in a few hours, maybe like let's say 4 more hours or 3 hours, it would be maybe like half in block out, half in like polishing or spline or what you want to call it. I typically just make the whole thing through and through in Lookout, and then I just polish it. So it's not really a very traditional way of working. You just kind of just put your idea into context, which means that you're just looking at the overall speed of everything, the timing of everything, all the way through, and you tweak basically like the time if, for example, the magazine coming up is too fast or too slow. Right now it feels a little bit too fast on this part right here, for example, so I need to tweak that. And then you just tweak on what we call the curve editor, which is right here. There we go. That is basically just the gun's bone, which is the attachment point between the hand and the gun, and virtually all of the shakes and the turns of the gun. Everything that makes this look realistic is done by using this bone. So I will work on that for a long time, just tweaking it until it works for me. And then I will also work on the fingers, making everything look believable. Like, for example, this hand could come up and you can see the thumb moving a little bit instead of having it just like completely static, which is, of course, not realistic. Nothing ever stays completely still. And then in the end, hopefully you have enough detail to make it like feel realistic. I'm kind of skimming through the whole process here by saying that, but what would actually happen is that you take great care to kind of just get all of the details that you learn. So, for example, I have a very specific set of like, okay, block out first, like we said, and there's a bunch of stuff I want to move, like, for example, having the gun move a little bit on screen while it's staying in this position, not completely static like there. Maybe have it move up a bit and then kind of float around a bit like it would realistically. And then I would work on just rotations, which could be, for example, that when the gun comes up, we do something like, well, that doesn't look right at all, but it would be like going up and then kind of coming back down because of the weight of the gun. Right now, that doesn't look right because it's just too early in the process to do that, for me at least. But once I get to my kind of later stage, I will be able to do all of the tweaks here in the curves. And finally, it's hopefully gonna look, you know, good in some way.
Well, that is the beauty of this streams like this. You get to see it, the process from the very beginning, and all the effort that goes into big updates like 0.14. One skull mentions a really cool idea for a chapter would be if the UIU or someone would go to Site 19 after the breach occurred. So it would be like searching through a destroyed site for finding documents. That would be interesting, but I guess the question is, would you find it boring if you were just like walking through environments in a walking simulator and didn't have anything to shoot? It would be an interesting idea, and you could definitely try and pitch it if you ever catch some of the more senior developers like Trey, Albarni, or Bowman in a stream, and see if that is something they would do. Although I don't know, do you like walking simulators, Anders?
I mean, I do play a lot of Arma when I can, so I guess I do. But everything has to have a function, right? Like, so if, for example, as you say, you had something to shoot at, or there was some sort of, let's call it like a complication to just going through these hallways, yeah, you can just make stuff up. If you play Dungeons and Dragons, that's the whole thing, right? You get a little bit of a walking quest, like you're just going to fetch something or go to this place. And of course, it doesn't go smooth, right? Like something is going to happen. Same thing in the video game, right? You just make a simple quest appear easy enough, and then, yeah, just make it complex, and it's going to be fun.
I guess when I was thinking about walking simulators, I was thinking less Arma, more like Gone Home.
Oh, I see. Oh, no, yeah, honestly, I haven't played those, no, sorry.
Or what's that other one that's like a kind of like a forefront of the walking simulator genre, Firewatch, where you're, you just kind of like walk in the woods?
I wouldn't know. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can't know every single indie game. There's so many of them out there. King Graboid asks, are there any limitations on what guns can be put in the game in terms of trademarks and licensing?
Yes, that is a very good question. That is, yes, it is. Like, short question is definitely, yeah. There are people that we work with that have certain relationships to some of those companies. And that's pretty much like how you walk around that, is to actually have a relationship with them directly or indirectly. In some cases, you can alter stuff, like on this Drebog, for example. I believe we just went, instead of talking to Grand Power directly, I think we just have the bare minimum of markings, which means that it's not going to really be a problem. You can do like what Ready or Not is doing, which is like having phony markings. In some cases, that's worse. Apparently, like if you have, for example, Glock and you just call it schmuck or something, like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But sometimes it's worse. It depends on the company. It depends on the people we work with telling us like, okay, you can't do that. We talk to the company, they don't like it. We can't have that, for example. But this one, for example, the Stribog, fine. Yeah, it seems to work in the legal sense. It seems to be no problems. The MP5, we have, well, not the Eckler and Koch one. We have the actual US-made Zenith one, which is like, yeah, they're fine with that. Zenith is happy that we are using it. No problems. Yeah. So it all depends.
That's so interesting, though, that like the gun licenses was a aspect I never thought was like a big deal in kind of making these games, that you actually had to get like a license. I always thought it was like you don't have to license to have like a nuclear weapon in your game or some other firearm. But I guess
Yeah, but it's
oops, sorry.
very brand related. Yeah, no, like if you're, for example, talking, you want to have Adidas or Nike in your game, right? Like it's gonna cause issues somewhere, and it's very similar, like Coca-Cola. Like it's the same kind of thing in the gun world, where you have big brands like Hector and Koch or EOTech, or like it all depends on what those brands and the people that are sitting in their like PR departments or what they call it, right? If they don't like it and they don't want it to happen, then that's when the lawsuits happen, and that's when you have issues. Like it's just about whatever that brand wants to be portrayed as. Like if they feel like this is not a good portrayal of our product, then yeah, that's not going to happen. Or if they think like, yeah, this is great, we want to have our product in our game and it's going to be mutual beneficial, like that's a really nice PR opportunity for us, then there's no problem. So it's really depending on what they think, what kind of benefits they can see from working or allowing people to have their stuff in the game.
We also have another person here who is a aspiring animator. Zophie asks, for someone getting into animating first-person arms with a weapon model, are there any good resources out there Anders would recommend to start with or look at?
Yes. So there are a few resources, way too few in my opinion, in terms of just getting started on how to do this. When I started out, for example, it was like, okay, I want to be able to do kind of what Modern Warfare is doing. I can see that there is some sort of like, camera shake going on here, and I can see they're moving the gun around on the screen, and they're constraining the magazine to the hand and so on. Like, there's so many things that I didn't understand how happened. I could just see that that's a thing, and I want to learn that. Now, on YouTube, there might be a few things that you may find useful, like just to get started on just basic constraint. For example, like just how to constrain something. For example, in this case, the gun and the hands are moving together because the hand is in fact constrained using, what is it called again? This is a copy transform to a child of, which is like you have to learn all those terms. And by using those in the right way, you can have the hand either not follow or follow the gun bone. And that's kind of the first thing to learn. And then, of course, it's just about really understanding what exactly you want to make. Like, for example, if we were to go on YouTube and you found, let's say, Insurgency Sandstorm's animations, those are like the best, in your opinion. Okay, I want to make that. You could try to just see if you could move the gun around on the screen in the same way, and then figure out that, okay, it's really hard to do that just by moving it physically, like frame by frame. So if we go in here and look at every single frame, and we make these small yellow keyframes every frame, and I want to make a movement that looks real nice, it's very tedious to do that. Yeah. doesn't look good at all. It just snaps around the screen. It looks very strange. That's not the way to do it. And then going from that to figuring out that, okay, so there is something to do with doing a blockout, like we're doing here, where we get kind of a smooth transition. It doesn't look quite good yet, but it's at least something in the right kind of ballpark, and it moves roughly where I want it, and there's not that many keyframes. That's more the right way to do it. And then from there, you figure out that, okay, so we can do a polish phase. We can try to make this look better by actually adding additional things in the curve. So for example, instead of just going smoothly up here and staying still, you can try to add a little bit of roll just to see what happens, okay? There we go, and it's all of a sudden trying to do a little bit of a little shake at the end there that looks also very not good until we actually figure out how to do that properly. And at this point, there is not enough resources online to actually learn this properly. Like, the only way I've been able to learn this is by talking to a lot of other animators, dissecting their projects. Like, in the beginning, I just asked animator friends, like, hey, can I have your blend files? Could I look at those? Can I just see what you're doing with the keyframes and the curves? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. And eventually, I started getting an understanding of how to do stuff in a specific order, and eventually I also understood that, man, this is very, very hard when you start to try to learn, like, just from the basics. Like, it makes sense to just, you go here, okay, gun starts down here, it goes up here, and so on. All of that stuff is like, okay, that's basic, but then how do you make this look realistic? How do you make it look like Modern Warfare or whatever? So to answer the question, just for resources, I should probably get to do what I've been saying I would do, which is to actually make some of the tutorials myself, like actually just go through a couple of the guns, film the whole process, and just talk about exactly what I'm doing, so people can at least get some sense of, knowledge from that. And we should also try to, like, in general, like, the animators should try to, in some way, bridge the gap between first-person gun animations and generally working on animations, which is, there's a lot of resources if you, for example, wanted to work for Pixar, right? And you want to just learn animation. You have 12 principles of animation. You have stuff like, a sense of weight. You have travel through. You have stretch and compress, or what you call it. All of that stuff is like, it makes some sense, but it doesn't quite work in first-person animation. So it's just so many things that's not been written down, taught properly. I wish it was. I should probably try to do my part instead of just complaining like I'm doing. And yeah, eventually we will all be able to, try to figure this out together, rather than just people sitting in their own little studios.
That was a fantastic overview of how to. It does seem like very daunting, but at least you broke it down and kind of gave steps. Although, have any Pixar animators ever gone into gun animation? It feels so antithetical to what the skill set is known for.
I honestly don't know, but I can say that the people we have in our studio, we have at this point two like generalist animators that are really, really good at, let's call it just like general animation. They could work for Pixar, right? They can do creatures, they can do humans, they understand motion capture stuff, they understand how to work in spline and all the stuff that people learn when they learn to become animators in school, right? Like the stuff that makes, if you're an animator, you know that stuff. I don't know any of that stuff because I know basically just the part that is the gun animation, and I know a little bit of mocap because I learned it from other people in the studio. And I realized that there are very different kind of skill sets, to the point where we can talk about animation in the animation department, and we can kind of gloss over like the broad, let's call it like skills that goes in there. But the moment we start talking about the details, we realize, hey, this is like, yeah, it makes no sense. Like, what I'm doing doesn't make any sort of sense to, for example, the people animating the SCPs in our game. Like, it's not the same workflow. It's not the same way of working. They use reference in a very different way. Yeah. it's just not the same thing, and it's very annoying to me that that's the case.
Although here's kind of an interesting thought. How come like mocap hasn't like completely replaced kind of like hand animation? Because how are these like two crafts? How do they help or hinder each other? Because ideally, wouldn't mocap, at least for a dumb person like me, seem like put bouncing balls in and everything, and then you get it perfectly. But that still is not the case.
Yeah, no, I would say like mocap versus the keyframing is two very, very different workflows. So if we were to replace everything with mocap, which is honestly like not a bad idea, right? Because it's a very quick workflow if you have it set up correctly. Yeah, that would be real nice. We could potentially like just make, for example, gun animations with mocap. It has been tried. People have tried also to track frame by frame a video of people reloading in real life with a camera on their head, and it doesn't look that good. Like, again, the same thing with Infinity Ward. They figured out that, yeah, the only way to get the animation style that we want, which is like really good, realistic first-person animations, is to keyframe. They don't really know why. I don't think they do. I think they just know for a fact that they know that if they do mocap, they get something that's kind of realistic looking, but it's not exaggerated in the right way. That doesn't matter for if you're doing, for example, third-person animations like we're doing mocap for pretty much all our running, walking, jumping, all that stuff like we talked about. We don't really do keyframing on that unless we really have to. Like, that's just easier to do in mocap. Well, when we do a chicken man, it's kind of a question, right? Like, do you try to mocap a chicken man? How do you do that? Do you get a guy on stilts to walk around the studio? Do you, do you get every kind of movement? Is possible to do that, even if you had a really good stuntman to get him to do the charge attack that we have, for example? How would you actually capture that? So that's kind of the question, right? Like, it depends. It depends on what you want to do, what is possible. Both are equally useful. And if you're a really good keyframe animators, like the people we have working on our SCPs, Bejoy and Gabriel, they are really, really good. And in my opinion, they can make something that looks like it's mocapped by just keyframing and using reference, right? So that's kind of the thing.
That is interesting to hear that like the mocap had, because there is motion capture in 5K, but obviously motion capture is kind of like used more for movements versus like the individual animations, and there's a limit. You can't mocap so many bizarre SCPs or a chicken man.
No, exactly. And in some cases, we're talking about a combination where, yeah, you could mocap parts of the SCP, but you don't really want to mocap all of the small, intricate details of, let's say, body parts moving, like small, intricate movements of the muscles. That stuff is something that is very hard to mocap. You could mocap the creature walking, sure, but then you'd need to also animate the flexing of the muscles and the breathing and the tongue flailing and the eyes moving. Like, all of the small stuff like that is still easier to just keyframe. You do use facial mocap, like a lot of big titles do that, right? Like, you have your cameras and your technologies that basically just films a face, and you get really nice, intricate, detailed mocap on that. So again, it always comes back to like, what is the most useful tool here? Would you use a hammer or would you use a screwdriver? And right, it's just like, obviously, when you're standing there with either a screw or a nail, it's like, okay, I'm gonna use the hammer because this makes sense. That's kind of how we work as well with mocap and other things like that.
Well, different tools for the different jobs, which is always good to apply. Mikan asks, what kind of plans do you all have for SCP-5K in the future? I don't know how much I can get into that, but I know that can't really give like a definitive date for the next update. Just because we don't want to disappoint you by having a date and then it gets pushed back further. But I do know that there's like comprehensive features, and they will probably be talked about in a devlog. But I guess, Anders, what would you say is the what do you think is coming in the world of animations that is coming for the future?
Oh, honestly, I would say a lot of mocap, a lot of new SCP, generally like keyframe animations, uh, improvements to the stuff we already have, and also new SCPs, of course. I would say for the guns, constant improvements on what's already there. As I'm learning, I'm just trying to make it better. And we also have stuff like this where it's just like, first equip or stage reloads. Why not, right? Like we're talking about different features here that would potentially come and enlarge the scope of the game, we can say, right? Like it just depends on how far do we want to push this. We're constantly discussing that inside the team as well. Like obviously we want to make everything and a little bit more. We can't really do that, right? Because of course there's a time limit to everything like this, and yeah, in the end it just comes down to priorities, I would say. Like in the animation department, everything we can and will produce is gonna be just as good and as much as possible of this, like the stuff that we have seen in the game right now, right? Good animations, variations, better looking animations, yeah, everything.
It's always time is the enemy of creation, and that is what always must be managed. Uh, Dragon Actual asks, by any chance, did you see the Fallout TV show?
Yes, I did. I really like it. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm. I like the attention to actually having the details from the games. Like that's my main thing, is that it's just like it does indeed, in my opinion, follow the essence of what they did in the games. The combat, the funny dialogue, creepy, weird, like characters that just downright crazy.
it did do a fantastic job of emulating the art direction and the tone of the game. It was like very impressive, and I think that I feel like the Fallout power armor is like the best depiction of power armor on screen. I could be wrong. Is there any other better power armor in live action that we have so far?
In my opinion, I don't think so. Like it's pretty damn good in that show.
I guess the reason I brought up is like, halfway through, there's this one guy who like works for Vault Tech, and he says, "What is the ultimate weapon? It's not nuclear weapons. It's time. Time is how you beat your enemies."
That's a very good point. That man was clearly a game developer.
Yeah, he knew what was up. That is the ultimate thing, and unfortunately, it's difficult to buy infinite amount of time as much as we would like to. Dragon Actual asks, Area 12's campaign originally ended with going up a lift, while the current one ends going down an elevator. As future updates go on, will there be an official ending how Area 12 is finished?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like, if the game at this stage is not having like the proper like start to finish thing, is because we're mid development, and the plan obviously is to have a cohesive story where it's like you start, it ends, it has repercussions in the SCP universe. It's story driven through the entire campaign. All of the stuff that is like, what would you say? Like I say, it's gonna be expanding on the stuff that is already there, and also kind of just developing in both ends. More start, more end, more middle, basically, right?
Yeah, I'd say it's like building on the foundation, adding more stuff, and ultimately featuring it so it is the product that they envision. I guess that's one of the that's things about early access that's both fun and frustrating, is that you don't quite see the full vision. You see different aspects of the full vision, and each little piece kind of like gets closer there. So like as I commented earlier, I thought the bark lines go a huge way to like giving the game personality and makes it more feel alive, which is a really cool addition, but very subtle addition to this new update. And it's just a matter of like adding more stuff to achieving that ultimate vision. Although, it's like jazz. You take, you add. Sometimes you feel like you don't need a part, but you can't, iterate too much. That's the part of like game development that's so terrifying, is that like you really can't judge it until all the components are there accurately. But by the same token, you can't like risk developing all these components just to like have the nightmare scenario that like your game isn't fun or it's not working. Like, what was that game that Blizzard made before Overwatch, Titan? That like they had this like hero shooter simulator where you'd like play Sims during the day, then at night you'd don your superhero suit and go play Overwatch. And they spent years on this project, and they couldn't find the fun in it. And then ultimately they retooled the combat, and that's kind of like what became Overwatch, which I mean, some people will argue that Overwatch is cringe now, but I'd say it's overall very successful. And the fact that it like managed to single-handedly create its own genre, the hero shooter, just goes to show that like ultimately it was successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It is terrifying.
I think we're really figuring. Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, we're definitely like figuring out stuff that we didn't know for a long time, in terms of just getting exactly the kind of vision of the game, and actually be able to finish it in some reasonable time, right? Like, we could continue this forever, and by the end of it, we could still not have the product that people wanted, right? But at the end of this, it's gonna be a really, really cool experience, hopefully. It builds, like you said, on the stuff that is fun in our game, like the gunplay. And honestly, for me, it's like we need to have more PvP. It's really cool, and it's like I want to play more of that. And then, in addition, we also want to have all of the different story elements that we are planning to have, and we want to have really good immersive kind of like SCP investigation kind of mechanics, right? Like you actually learn about the universe. You are part fighter, part detective kind of thing. So all of that stuff is like, right now it's closer to what it was supposed to be than ever before, and it's gonna just be more so as we go along here, I think.
Yeah, exactly. There's the elements I'm most excited for is like when the narrative stuff starts to like kind of become more present. Well, I think the sad thing about gaming is like, narrative is like, something we prize, but in terms of development, I'd say it's like the least important aspect of it, because ultimately a game that functions is more important than like, but it's the narrative that like, that's what creates culture. That's what like drives cosplay. That's what like drives people to like make videos and lore. So that's what I'm excited to see eventually make its way into, because like I love seeing culture being built around the game. But it's like jazz, the band all coming together to make this unique thing.
Yeah, exactly. And not to take anything away from like you say, the actual storytelling elements of the game, like that's something I'm very excited for as well. Getting the game functioning is also, of course, as important, but it's just a different. Like I said, it's the big band coming together, doing their own thing together. So if everyone does their part, it's gonna be a really good thing, and hopefully that's gonna be happening within a reasonable amount of time where all those parts come together and we have a really nice, fun game that has all the elements that we want.
Dragon Actual asks, will the campaign here have multiple endings to choose from / exits? That's a good question. I don't know if I have the clearance level to comment on that. My guess is no, but you never know. It's an SCP game. There could be like something at the end, but that is a question I would say for Bowman or Trey Bishop.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know either.
It would be cool, but like, what's that game that like just got announced? The Judas game, where Ken Levine wanted to like, how do I build narrative Legos? How do I build a story experience that isn't just like, going on a roller coaster ride at Disneyland? And supposedly he has his answer, but that's like what? It took 10 years to develop that. And how many years was Baldur's Gate 3 in development? That game was a massive
Yeah,
undertaking.
yeah, that's true.
So do you want a finished product, or do you want multiple choice Skyrim? I mean, it would be cool, but it's not something I could promise. But definitely ask if that's a possibility. But back to the gun questions. Rusty Beartrap asks, had a question about the Stribog model, the A3 in the game. The bolt handle reciprocates when the model doesn't. The A1's charging handle does reciprocate when firing. Wondering if it'll be changed.
Yeah, so it was actually, I was wondering that myself because I do own the non-reciprocating variant and I do prefer that. I think we actually ended up with the reciprocating one just because in terms of gameplay function, it looks cooler to have something move on the screen rather than just having it static. In competition shooting, people have pros and cons in terms of actually changing it. Like you can indeed change your bolt carrier and your charging handle to either or. And the pro is, of course, like you have more control over the bolt. I'm not sure how nerdy I need to go in, but it's like, yeah, it was supposed to be the reciprocating one, and it's just because of the like elements of the game that's more visual. Same on the Scar, right? Like we could have made the non-reciprocating bolt thing. When that came out, we had our Scar sitting like ready, and we were like, huh, we could just change the bolt carry group and everything, and it would work. But then it's like it's nice to have something move on the screen. And it's more, again, the same kind of exaggeration that we talk about.
Here's a question I think you'll really dig into from Adam Vale on YouTube. How much opportunity have animators been given to influence the game creatively? Have there been weapons, enemies, features, etc. in the game that have originated from the animation team?
Yeah, I would say quite a bit. And in the indie scene, it's not so common to have people just work in one department. So my story, for example, is that I was working in 3D art for like a year before I started animating proper for FRA. I was just doing like the gun textures, and then eventually I did some props. All the stuff that we were doing were basically like joint kind of game design and making stuff. And like, yes, we do get quite a bit of influence because we're also kind of affecting how the game goes in the direction. Like, yeah, we can do a lot of guns, for example. Then we are gonna do a lot of guns because we have the ability to do so. And then in this like part of the development, it's like, okay, so now we need to slow down on just making a bunch of guns because it doesn't make for a fun game. Then we're gonna go into other departments, and our gun guys are currently working on props or uh, helping out with QA or doing other things, right? And that's kind of the whole thing with indie. Again, like you don't get stuck in one department. You can do many different things and wear a lot of hats at the same time. So I would say I'm also like part game designer in some cases, tweaking stuff, talking to Albarni about like how we should change stuff with the gunplay and so on. So yeah, that's kind of the answer to that, I guess.
It'd be really fun. Have you ever heard of Cursed Halo?
No, no, I have not.
It's like a popular mod for Halo where like just everything is just kind of wonky and weird. Like all the guns have like these weird effects, and the enemies are big. The idea is to like just kind of like make the game feel new and off kilter. It'd be funny to like just for like April Fool's release an update of the game or an optional mode where like the guns are super long and the zombies are big. Just like tweaking all the variables. Just a wonky 5K, just as like a fun thing. But that might be a little too ambitious.
No, I mean, we already had, like, throughout the process of the development, we had our very tiny and very big Glock 19X, which is like one of the pistols, and it was made into, oh, I don't even remember how big it was. It was probably like 2 meters long or something. We had the dev suppressor, which is like one of the suppressors that we realized that if you bought enough baffles for the suppressor, and I think we calculated to be something like $20,000 or something of baffles, which is like parts of the suppressor, you could make a 30-meter long suppressor. Like, you could. There's no reason why you couldn't, other than it's stupidly long. It would be very impractical. It would be very heavy. And it's in the game, or it was in the game, or yeah, it's just like a funny joke, as you say. And it's based on realism again, which is kind of the funny part to us as well, where you just do that, like you say, just, hey, let's make some hilarious, funny stuff in the game, and then we also push it into how would this be grounded in realism if we can, right?
That is always the $1 million challenge. How do you find that ground between realism and playability? Um, uh, M. Feps on YouTube asks, we have yet to see the first GOC operation. We have yet to see. Well, you are seeing the first GOC operation. You're seeing it on Antarctica. But I think you also were asking, is there going to be more GOC content? And I think unambiguously, without getting in trouble, I can say yes. The Antarctic mission is like just the first step. I think there is a more ambitious component of it coming. With some special surprises. So that is not the end of the GOC. I don't think they would give them those cool Titanfall masks and cool snowsuits. Or line that people keep on saying, oh, this line goes so hard. We will protect the light while you watch the dark. If there wasn't plans to do something more ambitious for them. But the Antarctic was like a huge leap forward in the fact that it was like the first like kind of like new biome outside of Outpost Axiom that was kind of like added to the game. But Dragon Actual asks, what are the about the idea of vehicles you can drive? I don't think there are any plans for vehicles. But if you keep on memeing forklift certified, who knows? Maybe forklifts would be possible. But Anders, I think you talked to me that like animating vehicles is really difficult.
Yeah, at least from what I heard from colleagues in other studios when they work on that stuff, it's a whole thing, right? Like, you have to make sure that it's not super wonky. Looking at some other games where it's like they just added driving halfway and it didn't really work. Not going to mention any games specifically, but it's like it has been done before. It's not something that you just add on a whim, I would say. Like, you need to make it proper if you want to have it, and I don't think we have the maps for it. Like, I'm not sure where you would drive it. It's not really like we have any open areas big enough. And not sure if we are going to have that, but yeah. It's always nice to have vehicles, but it's also not kind of necessary in a CQB game or in the current state of this game, at least.
God, can you imagine like a silent cartographer, final level where you're like riding in a Jeep with a giant machine gun and then there's just like SCPs flying everywhere. I'm sure everyone would love to see that, but I don't know if it makes sense from a development resource standpoint. Or a tone standpoint. This is supposed to be more grounded. As much as I would love the cheesy, some cool track pulsing in the background as you're like just mowing down hordes of SCP-173B, shattering their concrete structures with heavy munitions. It feels totally going against what the dev team is going for.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
Rusty Bear Trap says, are there any plans for weapons not strictly based on IRL, like weapons developed by factions for potentially unique purposes?
Yeah, that's the thing that we talked about with SCP guns as well. Like, I don't know necessarily, like, in terms of the actual specific guns. It wouldn't be a bad idea, and it would certainly be something that would be interesting to do, I think. Something that's not strictly IRL, like you say, and having, for example, flamethrowers or the Gauss gun, like we talked about, or Gauss rifle. Like, you have a lot of cool technology that would potentially be able to exist in like the SCP universe. Like, it doesn't make, there's no reason not to have it, but at the same time, I don't know, like, can't really say for certain what we're gonna do there.
Someone asked previously, if you had to guess, how much time does a gun animation take in human hours? Like, from scratch, is it like 4, 5, 8 hours, 10 hours?
Yeah, so one animation and not like a whole set would probably take, let's say, maybe 8 hours, 6 hours, something like that. It also depends on like what that animation is. Like, the longer the or more complex the animation is, the harder it's gonna be. We have worked now on this for, with some talking, for less than 2 hours, so we're almost at the end of the blockout, as you can see. Now we have put a bullet or cartridge into the chamber, and we can go back to baseball. So it's like, yeah, that's about halfway, and then the polish phase would also take about the same time. Yeah, maybe this is gonna be done in like 6 hours, something like that, start to finish.
So the 6 to 8 hours. Somehow that's a little less than I was expecting. I thought it'd be more. But obviously, just seeing all the lines and it just seems like an overwhelmingly intimidating thing to tackle.
Yeah, and it's all, again, like I said earlier, if you have your workflow the same every time, it's not so bad. Like, in the beginning, it was super tedious and it made my head explode. Like, it didn't make any sense. Now it's like, okay, I know that I can take a break at whatever point because I know I'm like, let's say 70% into the blockout. And that's like that's like a calculated thing that I can quantify. I can say that, yes, this is indeed something where I can stop and I can start, and then I can start on the next step, which is polishing phase, for example, and I can call it done. Like, I can actually say that this is, like, when textures used to be my main job, I did the same thing, where it's like, yeah, I know now that I have stopped making the main material. I'm now moving on to weathering or like wear on that material, and it feels like a good thing because that means that you have a very nice sense of like progression.
So here's a little bit of a speculative question. Let's say you could have any kind of futuristic weapon added to the game. You have carte blanche to say, we're adding in this. What would you pick? Would you want like a rail gun, some sort of laser gun? What would be your dream thing to sort of animate from scratch if you could, dictate that the game should have some sort of future gun?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't really know if it's gonna be, like you said, it needs to be something that's not a ballistic gun, because a futuristic ballistic gun is typically just like what we see on, the development line right now. Like, I would like to have our newest Spear LTs, like the MCX SIG guns. Those are really cool. They are technically futuristic guns because they're currently being, developed and tested, and just now, like, getting to a point where they're actually used or viable, and they're done with like the prototyping. Those guns would probably not count. So let's say that we have, the Gauss gun, for example, sounds really fun because it's like a whole weird reload where you kind of put something at the bottom of like a big magnet field, right? And then you activate that magnet field. I'm not even sure what the sound would be like with that. You would probably need to have some sort of exaggeration to that. You have to change batteries every so often. You have an LCD screen telling you like how much battery you have left, and you would need to, I guess, not really animate that, but have, yeah, talking about like having some sort of liquid gun, like you shoot even liquids like a water hose. There's so many things that you could potentially do that would be interesting to animate. but they wouldn't really be better than ballistic guns in most cases, right? Because there's a reason why in real life people use guns, because guns are pretty damn effective, right? So you wouldn't probably see us do, like, let's say a crossbow and say that's a really good gun, because it's not. It's a crossbow. It's fine. It's less viable than a gun. And the same with, like, I don't know, like a Gauss rifle, for example. Like, yeah, it takes a long time to load, and it's not really that dangerous because it's not powerful enough to do maybe that much damage, or it's not even, yeah. It's really stupid arguments for me, because it's supposed to be fun, right? Like, it's not the realistic nerd in me that's supposed to talk. It's the guy that's like, hey, flamethrower, woohoo, RPG inside.
Well, it seems like you have two halves. There's the child in you who's like, I would love to have a lava gun that like works like a hose and shoots people with lava. But then there's a part of you saying, "Oh, Jesus Christ, that's so many aspects to it. I actually have to be responsible for making this lava gun work."
The guns from the movie, is it District 9? It's called?
Oh,
the one
yeah.
With the aliens in South Africa? Yeah, those guns. All day long, right? No idea how they work. They're very cool.
God,
Splat people.
That is like what Neil Blomkamp is, like, such a good designer. He just like makes all this like really great grounded futuristic weaponry. You're right. Like the sci-fi guns of District 9 are freaking amazing. It's such a shame that he's not quite as good of a writer as he is like an animator, special effects and production designer.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that element is really cool.
Did you ever see any of the Oat Studios shorts by any chance?
I did not. What's that?
So Neil Blomkamp started like this YouTube channel. I think they're on Netflix now, where he basically like got this like film collective group together, and they were making these short films, and it was called Oat Studios. If you ask me, I think it was just a bunch of pitches for like things he wanted to do as original movies, but none of them really got picked up. But he had like some really big talent in them. So like Sigourney Weaver was in one, Dakota Fanning was in another one. And they had this one thing about these like reptilian aliens that take over Earth, and then it's like about people like fighting it back against the reptilian aliens, and it's like a really kind of grounded, Iraq feeling alien invasion story. I think you might appreciate it from a technical aspect, although I always thought it kind of had like, I'm 14 and this is deep energy. But I feel like as a a craftsman, you'd probably find the shorts really interesting just from that aspect of it, from the design and animation standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to check that out.
I'd recommend it. They're not super long, so each one's like maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. Here's a spicy question from Adam Vale. Have you found any uses for generative AI models in any of your animation work?
What kind of models you said?
Generative AI models.
Oh, no. So the only way that I've seen AI used in anything like this, it's like, I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't think I've seen it done in like first-person animations yet. At least in like the local circle I've been in. Like, yes, I know it's a thing, and I know it may or may not be, something that is a tool in the future, or yeah. It's really not safe to say, but no, I have not used it myself, at least.
I know that Afraid has a strict no AI policy. I have no idea if like AI would be like useful for anime. Is there like any AI tool that's like good for animation right now, or would it just be like using like Mid-Journey to like get art references?
Yeah, I think more that, and then maybe if you were able to use it to, for example, clean mocap, like if you have your... Okay, let's say you have a rig, and you want it to just show us a guy walking, right? And you are able to have the AI understand what that walking should look like. It's not gonna look wonky. You don't need to spend a lot of time cleaning it up. Sure, maybe, right? But it's just a lot of factors at that point, because it needs to understand your rig, which again, the skeleton that we're working with right here, that's custom to a fray. Like having this hand move is not as easy as just telling the AI to have this hand move. It needs to be a very specific bone connected to the other bone. I think it's a very interesting concept that would just, I guess, it intrigues me, and I need to know more in order to answer that.
Is there any program you're aware of, or is there like is it all just nightmares? Because like I guess maybe Sora AI, but I don't think that's available to the public. And then there's all these like video, but all of that looks like just like terrifying garblegook. All those animations. I'm sure you've seen like the nightmare fuel of Will Smith eating spaghetti.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, right? Because I'm not really scared as much as I'm intrigued by new tools, right? Because disruptive innovation is a thing, right? Like we're talking about a new tool that we could potentially use for something good and make our days easier, which is something we have done since the beginning of time, right? Like it's not really a dangerous thing. It all becomes dangerous if we use it wrong, which is our responsibility, right? So it's like, yeah, I would definitely like to use AI tools if it helps me do mandatory boring tasks that we don't really use our creativity for. We just use our time, which is precious, and it's costing the studio money to have people use their time to do tedious, repetitive tasks that by definition could have been done by a computer. That's why we have calculators, and that's also why we'd have your, as you said, it like an animator tool. We're literally using, easier and easier tools anyway. So having something like that to help us, awesome. Having it completely replace animators, I don't know if it's possible. Honestly, it's too much creativity, and that's just something I haven't seen AI do well, right?
Yeah, I personally am looking forward to a day when I can make like my own Pixar cartoon with AI. Although I understand the ethical repercussions of it. As someone like me who's kind of like, you ever watch that episode of Futurama? I think it was like the last episode of the first one where Fry like wants to play this instrument, but he's terrible of it because his hands can't keep up with the speed needed for the holophone. But then he makes a deal with the robot devil to get like robot hands, and then he can finally play the beautiful instrument music.
I think I see that, yeah.
I feel like AI is like, I have these wonderful visions of incredible cartoons, but I don't have the skill to draw or do any of the hard work needed to create them. AI will be my robot hands. At least that's my fantasy. Of course, the nightmare version is that like everyone's displaced from doing work, and to use these AI services, it costs $999 a year, and it's just this horrible dystopian landscape. So I do think that there's and right now it seems like it's more leaning into the dystopian landscape versus mine unleashing my artistic potential.
Nah, really excited at least to see what that brings, and not really scared. Like I said, it's just gonna be another tool that we can use in a responsible way.
Fingers crossed that it is responsible.
Yeah.
So Rusty Bear Trap asks, underbarrel launcher attachments, are there something being planned on adding to the game? Maybe not just like limited to rifles like the MP5 or the grenade launcher? That is a good question. We got so many attachments in the game. Are we ever going to get any cool underbarrel attachments?
Yeah. I don't see why not. Again, we know how to do them. We have studied it. I know for a fact that the guys worked on Squad in the beginning, and they have that stuff. So they have, like actually worked with something like that in the past. Same with the bipods, right? Like stuff that it would be very cool. It would need to have some sort of reason to be there. It would probably be the same kind of stuff as you have in Ready or Not, where we are, after all, a CQB game. So having explosive devices inside doesn't really make much sense for, let's say, other than breaching or fighting very large SCPs. It's just going to cause you to blow up your friends and yourself, which is not cool. Same with the RPG-7, right? Like, yeah, it's a very cool gun, and why not have it, right? Well, how would you use it? How would you not die instantly from using it, right? So yeah, would be very cool. I like it, and it would certainly be possible.
Although you think that would like, because like I remember in like the PS2 era, every other game had like the secondary attachment that would like launch a grenade from it. Is that is that too much Rambo to like have a horde of chickens running at you and then you just like use the grenade under attachment, or do you think there's a way to have that without like breaking the immersion and the tactical horror of the game?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because then you have to look at how it's used in a realistic scenario. Like I said, it is indeed used for specific use cases. Like, for example, if you want to shoot a smoke grenade further than you can throw it, then yeah, that's awesome, right? You can actually just lob it somewhere and it would puff into like a smoke of something, like let's say poison gas or whatever, or yeah. So that could be something we could do. And then the explosive part of that would just be, yeah, but wouldn't you also blow up yourself, right? Like you just need the distance and the reason for having it. I think again, like in Ready or Not, I think they do have that, right? And they have it like a separate thing. The what's it called again? Like the M32 Zero or something, like the standalone grenade launcher. You can attach it to a rifle or you can have it separate. Apparently, most special forces people these days don't have it attached to the rifle because it's heavy. And most of the time, you don't use it at the same time as you use the rifle. So having it on the rifle doesn't doesn't make any sense. So you have it as a separate gun that you carry on a separate sling. And that could be a thing, right? Like, so it all depends. As you can hear, you can nerd about that stuff for a long time. It is a thing. It just depends on how you use it in the game. And like I said, don't want to have people just use it to troll or to like, yeah, that would be also fun, but it will also kind of take away the immersion, as you said. Just blow up your friends because it's cool.
It's a delicate balance. Well, something more grounded. Rusty Bear Trap asks, also, any thoughts on having alternative ammo like slugs, armor piercing, HE, etc., either as a selectable option or as a full kit option?
Yeah, again, with the like planning for the game, I think it's a really cool idea. It needs to be done in the right way. Actually, there was some cool things I wanted to show you guys with this gun. If I get to the magazine right here. A while back, I was kind of just going through the ammunition with Samir, like the texture and the models for all of the different calibers we have in the game. And we said, okay, so we're doing it anyway. Might as well just make armor-piercing bullets right away because it can be on the same texture. It wouldn't cost any extra performance. So it is, in fact, in terms of like the visuals, like we do have armor-piercing bullets for every gun in the game. They are there. I have personally set up a lot of them with the new bullets and said, hey, here it is. If you ever want to have it, here it is. We could even have, if you wanted to have hollow points, you could just make like a shape key on the bullet and bump the part in the front here in, so you don't get like a ugly seam. You could also make this invisible, but that would look kind of strange. Yeah, so I guess long story short, yes, absolutely. Like from the animators or the visual texture artists' perspective here, why not? It would be amazing to do. It would look really cool. And then the question is, how would it work in game? Because when we tried it in ISMC, people just used hollow points because there was no armor system, and hollow points did more damage. And when I play Ready or Not, I use hollow points because I'm not sure if they have armor. I'm not really sure if they have an armor system. I just know that if it's more damage, I'm gonna pick more damage, right? So it's just like at some point we get into these arguments where it's like, yeah, how would you do that? How would you do this efficiently? And then you could say that you have your plus P ammo, which is like you just overload or you load a higher power factor of ammo, which is a thing that you do in competition at least, or I think some countries as well load their 9mm, for example, hotter, which means that it's going to go faster, more damage, and you get more recoil and more wear on the gun. That's a thing, right? So as you can hear, there's a lot of things there I really enjoy, and I'm not really sure how you would do it in a game, right? Because you're just going to get these kind of overpowered things. Aesthetically, though, it looks pretty sweet to have like a steel case, just because variation, and then tungsten armor-piercing core on the bullets.
So that is more applicable. So there's a better chance. I can't guarantee it'll be in the game, but it is good to hear from a technical aspect different ammo types is a more potentially doable than like every SCP in the game. It takes a lot of effort. Although we are at like 2 hours so far, so I just want to check how you're feeling. It is later for you than it is for me. You feeling good? Do you have like a sort of stopping point in mind?
For me, we can stop whenever. Like, it just depends on the guys here getting bored. I think me talking so much about nerdy stuff might get boring pretty fast.
People seem to be enjoying the nerdy stuff, but we will keep going. We will keep going for as long as I can hold out, having not eaten breakfast.
Oh, yeah, that might be the stopping point. When you get hungry, you will tell us, and we will stop.
I'll keep going for a little bit, but I'm glad to hear you're in good shape. So we'll go for like maybe like another half hour, see how people are feeling, and go by there. But I always like to be considerate of the talent and see how you're feeling.
I appreciate that. No, definitely good. Yeah.
Adam Vale asks, any plans to implement boss fights into the game? I think there is a boss fight planned, so look forward to that. There is a boss fight you can look forward to. Rando asks, did the GOC members canonically survive Antarctica? That is a fantastic question. I'm going to say yes, because the GOC story isn't over yet. Will they survive once the Antarctica mission is complete? You'll have to play the full update when that's available to know for sure. But as of right now, my guess is the GOC guys you're playing right now are still alive and well. This is a really interesting question. Sorry for not answering this before, but MT Feps 11 asks, will there be missions with actual cities instead of the site raids? Like some faction squad try to stop 10 samples from spreading to New York or Delhi?
That's a good question. I'd like to see that for sure.
That would be really cool. I can't make any promises just because, like, one, I can't announce content as a respect to the other team members. So I will say, like, the next time you see Trey or Bowman, ask for that. In fact, as of right now, I need to schedule it and put out an announcement. I think Bowman is going to do a stream on this Monday, discussing the 6.10 or no, the 0.14 update. So if you want to ask like bigger questions like that, I would save it for then and look for an announcement about the stream on Monday, since he will be taking all questions about the future and the past of the update to get a community response. I mean, that would definitely be cool. My fantasy would be like, I would love. You remember in Call of Duty 2 where they have that mission where you're fighting or like it's kind of like Red Dawn where like the Russians are invading like a suburb.
Yeah, Wolverines, I think the mission is called.
Yeah, exactly. That was a cool mission.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of the stuff that, like, if you look at what favorite games we had throughout 20 years, we played, tactical shooters and just take inspiration from maps like that. I would like to see stuff like, rooftop sniper fighting or, downtown Tokyo, like CQB fights, like a lot of stuff that just probably has been done before, and it's just a cool, different, scene, I guess.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing to like have like just like going through like destroyed houses, seeing the devastating ground level effect of like what the full SCP unleashed, all everything from containment breach. But I can't promise that that's in the cards because I think the scale to do that right would be tremendous.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But who knows? I never want to say what'll happen in the future. Maybe there's some billionaire guy right now who's like, I want to give you all the money, Afray. I love what you're doing. But I can't say that that's actually happening for sure. You'll love this. Real question: from a scale from COD to Gray Zone Warfare, how in depth are 5K's ballistics?
Yeah, no, right now they're not very in depth at all. Because it's a CQB game. I think it's just as easy as it just spawns wherever. And then if we were to go longer range, then we would need to do what Insurgency Sandstorm is doing, which is they have a hybrid where the ballistics are, I think, from about 80 to 100 meters, they start becoming physical calculations. So in CQB, it doesn't matter. It's going to be a lot of draw calls when you fire full auto, and there's like a million bullets flying around trying to get calculated. Looking at Arma 3 and its ace ballistics, it makes the game run like a slug. It's just not very good. But it's very good when you try to snipe, and then the hybrid makes a lot of sense. Where if you were to have a sniper mission in this game, for example, and you want to have your, bullets actually fly through the air and your pistol bullets not go so very far, and they actually just fall off eventually. All of that stuff would need to be calculated and set up, and we don't have that right now, as far as I know. And personally, I would very much like to see that. So, of course, like a whole thing about like beyond CQB is that we have a lot of guns that we haven't made yet, and some of the guns we do have are more suited to that role, which would make, well, it would just make the game more varied and have even more reason to have different guns. Because if you just have a CQB game, there is a few guns that are better. Just, yeah. So it's not in would be very cool.
Not particularly related to guns, but for the tools selection, will we see things like wire cutters, rangefinders, sandbags, etc.? Epic.
Yeah, I mean, wire cutters would be cool. I'm not sure exactly how that would be implemented off the top of my head. Like, it would be kind of cool if there is a fence that you can't climb. Like, I know that we are planning, of course, we have vaulting right now. Mantling would be a thing where it's like you can climb 2-meter fences, just jump up, and so on. So that might not be necessary. And then your sandbags would be, again, like if you're building a base or something. I'm not sure if that's the scope of the game or if that's the intention. So yeah, again, like maybe if it was the intention of the game. And rangefinder, again, depends on what kind of fighting you're doing, right? Because if you have a CQB game, you don't really need a rangefinder. What would you use it for, right? You're just standing right next to the guy that's trying to kill you, and you just need to shoot. Yeah. So that's pretty much like depending on what you want to do. You could elaborate also, say, hey, what about a breaching tool or a breaching shotgun, or let's say like I don't know, C4 or something, like a breaching charge. All of that stuff is like, yeah, cool, if it makes sense for the game and we find a way to implement that, and it's actually, within the scope and the pace of the game. Sure, right?
I hope that answers that question. Rusty Bear Trap. I think we already addressed that. Will there be emergency reloads introduced, animated into the game, losing current mag to get back shooting quicker? Didn't you do that a few hours ago, or am I mistaken? Is that like a different? Is emergency reload different than instant reload?
No, that's the same. Yeah, fast reload. So yes, again, the point of us doing that later and not just like plopping it in right now is the physical magazine asset thing that we do in fact plan to have. You would have your magazines drop to the ground, and like in Insurgency Sandstorm, you would be able to pick them up. I can also imagine that being connected to if you find, let's say, the similar gun that you have on the ground, and you would be able to take the magazine out of that gun and add it to your inventory again, like Insurgency Sandstorm. Like, that's a pretty darn good example of systems like that just worked for a pretty high speed game. Like, it wasn't as slow as, for example, Escape from Tarkov, in terms of just like you don't need an inventory to do that. You just grab it from the floor. and you can grab it from your friends if they have the same gun, and so on. Maybe even, grab magazines from your friends, like in Medal of Honor Warfighter, for example. Like, a lot of games have done very similar things. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. You just take whatever is cool from those games if it fits, again, the scope and the pacing of the game. I would like all of that stuff, of course. It makes a lot of sense, and it causes you to have more like a conscious decision on what gun you pick, right? If you pick the same gun across the whole team, well, then you can share ammo, which is nice, right?
Very diplomatic. Someone, M. Phepps asks, do you guys have plans to cooperate with other SCP game developers like the owners of SCP Fragmented Minds? Maybe in the future we might do a bundle with someone like those guys. But I think as of right now we're kind of like working on our own project. But of course we always like more people making SCP games. The more people who make SCP games, the more people who know about SCP. It's kind of like Warhammer. The more Warhammer games, the more people who get into 40K. The more it expands the hobby, has a cultural impact. So we always love that. So we love the fact that the people of Fragmented Minds are also trying to put out an ambitious SCP game. And that is super important for us. And who knows, maybe you'll see a bundle. But if you're interested right now, there is a bundle that is available on Steam for SCP-5K Operation and Operation Harsh Doorstep and Incursion Red River, so you can get both the games if you have not already for 10% off or 15% off. Check out those bundles if you want to get more tactical action for less money. Losing sanity, unrelated to guns, but what's the point of buying the Omni Edition? When will the supporter pack come out? I think the Omni Edition basically ensures that you get the DLC that's like once the 1.0 release is out, that's when Fray will transition to producing DLC, and that's when you get it. I think it's just kind of like a way to like ensure that it's a way of like helping us fund it and keep the lights turned on and keep things moving forward. But once 1.0, that's when the Omni Edition will kind of like show its value with all that DLC. I don't know. It would have been nice to give you gold guns or whatever for like Omni Edition supporters. But I think that would break the game a little too much.
I think there was some sort of gun skin in the works. Like, I don't know the details, but it was some sort of promised gun skin, like digital red or something. So yeah, I'm pretty sure like if any promises were made, I don't know those specifically because I wasn't actually here when that was a thing. But if it was made, yeah, definitely we'll of course keep those promises, and skins and stuff like that is always very possible to get well made and also not tacky, right? Yeah, exactly. You have seen the skins of the Mark 18 for example, so that's more like the spray paint skin system that we're developing right now. And then, of course, you could also do something like a Duracoat, Cerakote thing, right? Where it's just more perfect kind of digital pattern, not spray painted or whatever. So, yeah, I'm sure it's all going to be, eventually, like with the DLC and everything covered. But right now, we're just developing the core of the game, as Isaac is saying, trying to get everything to...
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could like give you something now, but we are good in like making sure our promises are met. Like the plushie, which should be shipping in July, to all you wonderful people who ordered it via either the website or the Kickstarter. That was like it felt kind of bad because some people were complaining like, oh, why are you trying to get plushies when you're blah 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 still should be making the game. The reason we did it with Makeshift is that was like the thing that made the most sense to like make sure people got their plushies while also giving people who didn't get them an opportunity to get them because like Plushie manufacture is not easy. They're like multiple components, and like you have to store them, and that costs money. It's not the easiest thing to do, and that was kind of like the best solution that we had to make sure that we fulfilled that promise. And just like we fulfilled the plushie promise, we will fulfill the promise to the Omni edition, unless something catastrophic happens. But right now, Affray has some good leadership that is very concerned. Their top priority is making sure that the company ultimately lives up to their promises, and so far, hopefully, we're doing a decent job of it. I can't wait for July once those plushies go out in the wild and you post images and social with all your plushies. Fun fact, I ordered one myself just so I could have it for social media purposes and to make, cute little neat funny things. Because I was like, all right, I gotta get this. I need this bad boy. Question: when is the next sale coming? So I'll tell you this much: the next sale is they're coming very, very, very soon. So keep your eyes peeled on it on Steam. I think Steam has like something you sign, like a contract where they want people buying all the time, so you can't give the exact date of the sales beforehand. There was a new detail I learned while working at Affray. So as much as I would love to announce from the high heavens, the sale is live, the sale is coming on X date, I have to be respectful for that. But I will say it's very, very, very soon. So just like keep your eyes peeled on Steam and our socials, since we'll probably announce it as soon as it goes live. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Ooh, another question, gun question for you. Rusty Bear Trap asks, are there any plans to add Russian pistols or any other Eastern Europe handguns in the game to go with the Kalashnikovs?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't know very specifically when that will happen, but we have like a list, an internal list of guns that we do want, and there are quite a few Eastern European and Russian guns on that list, including handguns. Personally, I would like to see the Garage. What's it called again? The Viking, I think it's called, like the more like very low bore axis kind of thing. Very cool, very fancy looking. And of course, there's a lot of other pistols that we still haven't done. The USP, I want to see P226. Yeah, many more.
Just out of curiosity, is there a nationality whose gun you like the most?
Good question. I mean, we Norwegians buy a lot of German guns. It seems to be like a European phenomenon. We just buy everything from HK. They make pistols, they make SMGs, rifles, pretty much everything. So in terms of just favoritism, I guess, from what we use here, yeah, Germany has pretty good stuff. There's also kind of cool guns coming out of, like Croatia, for example, or Stribog is a really good example. That's from Slovakia. So it's like you have a lot of cool companies. Czech guns are also very nice. But it's a lot of European stuff, really. Like, just, again, the bias of living here is always causing me to think that. But it's a lot of cool guns coming out of the different countries here.
So yeah, I'm surprised that that there was a nationality bias. I thought it would be like, oh, the American firearms, the Russians are so sick.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those are very cool as well, and very typically they kind of have different thoughts on how they're made, right? Like the typical AK versus M16 philosophy, where one is more like big tolerances, very like stupid proof, I guess. Like you can do a lot of things with an AK that you couldn't do with an AR-15, and then on the other side you have more like finely machined stuff, down to a T. Swiss made stuff is very typically very expensive and also very tight tolerances, very nice looking. My favorite pistol, for example, that I use myself is like a Phoenix Redback, which is 4,000 or 5,000 something US dollar gun. Because of the Swiss very tight tolerances manufacturing. And yeah, it does make a difference if you're really careful with that gun in terms of cleaning it and everything. It will serve you very well. It will be a very accurate gun, a very, like smooth operating gun. So I guess both have their uses. For the game, though, like aesthetically, there's a lot of nice stuff coming out of like the Belgian guns, of course, as well. I have to comment on like the FN stuff. F2000 is an interesting looking firearm that we haven't added yet, I guess. Like that would be kind of cool to add. The Star AUG is also nice. So yeah, there's a lot of different guns, different countries. Like once you have me started down the path of like, hey, isn't there like one country that doesn't have a cool gun? It's kind of like hard to say no, right? Like there's a lot of different cool things coming out of many different countries.
Losing Sanity asks, will we get to see more in-depth hand-to-hand combat, like just comboing a D-class to oblivion?
Oh, that sounds very difficult to make.
Yeah, isn't that like the nightmare of doing like really good melee first-person combat? Like even like the Elder Scrolls things, it's just like the melee combat is just whack, whack, whack.
Exactly, yeah, and you see your hands like on screen, and you would go into this kind of, I guess, melee third-person camera thing, like they do in Modern Warfare or something. Yeah, I'm not really sure how that would work, but it would kind of be wonky. I think the melee system itself is already hard and wonky enough to make. On the bright side, though, like, of course, I hope that's gonna be something that we eventually perfect and get really good, like the actual melee weapons we have and the way they feel, and that they have a sense of like power and direction. And yeah, again, like with the guns, it's a thing that you just have to balance with exaggeration.
Like there was like a brief period of time where there was like this people tried to do like, how can I add like, first person melee combat? Like there was this Xbox game called The Breakdown where you had like special powers and you could do like combo attacks, but nobody ever really got it right, and people kind of abandoned it. So I don't think so. But once it gets out there in the mod, if somebody wants to make a Sifu Kung Fu mod where you can like just beat down D classes with Metal Gear Solid style CQC combat, I would love to see it.
Same, absolutely. It'd be very cool.
And are there any plans for temporary pickup weapons, like you can find a flamethrower with limited ammo or a grenade launcher with a few shots? My guess is no, but you can ask. I mean, is that something you'd like to animate? I feel like that, like having like Halo style power weapons, would kind of like break the illusion and the fantasy of SCP-5K. But what's your professional opinion on that regard?
No, I think, like I said, it's in terms of gameplay, I'm not even sure if it would work. I'm very sure that if we were to animate something like that, it wouldn't be that bad because of the way. Well, if it's temporary, like you say, you don't really need to have many animations. You would just have some simple fire animations. Perhaps you can't even reload the thing, which then means that you don't really need any reload animations at all, really. So yeah, it's certainly something that would be possible to do. Something that it depends. Like again, that's a question for Trey or Albarni in terms of like, would that actually be something that we want to do, animation-wise? Sure, wouldn't be too bad to do something like that.
And more for back to the gun questions. Iman Constata asks, do you guys have plans to add a full auto version of a Glock with a drum mag?
I mean, drum mags in itself is kind of hard, right? Because it starts off with the whole question of where would you carry them? There's quite a few nice videos on YouTube that explains the problem where, yeah, they are clunky and they are noisy and they are very hard to carry. And most often you end up it's easier to just carry a bunch of stick magazines because, yeah, it's easier. It's less space, doesn't make noise. Yeah, in real life, they're not really a thing that people use much. Though, I think it would have its place if we had one. Like, let's say we did have, for example, a drum for a few selected rifles, and when you spawn with it, you spawn with the one. And if you drop it, well, that's it. It's gone, because that's kind of what people do in real life. They have it in the gun. When it's gone, they typically either throw it away or put it in a backpack, and they don't use it again until that's the first magazine they use. So that would perhaps be the most realistic way of doing that. And then finally, a Glock with a drum magazine. Yeah, trying to carry that in a holster is not really that's not really a thing. Like that would make it so you need to have the Glock out all the time. Yeah, it would just cause issues. Full auto Glock with a stick magazine though, maybe. I mean, those 33 round magazines, I've seen people have those, like actually carry them. I think some Russian special forces pictures show people with like at least Glock 17s with stick magazines, like long 33 rounders. So maybe it would be a thing, and of course games are fun, so yeah. We don't really have, I'm not sure how we do Glock generally though. Like Glock is a thing that is kind of hard to do. We have technically not a Glock, we have our Radian, I believe it is, like slides on an inconspicuous Glock looking frame, which is definitely not Glock, right? So that's a thing, and then yeah, it would need to be then an off-brand Glock 18 slide thing with yeah. It's hard. It wouldn't make sense. It's very cool for a mod though. Like, I do urge people to make mods like that.
Rusty Bear Traps asks, not to add another MP5, but with the FBI UIU will be MP5/10. Is that like a
Yeah, 10 millimeter. Yeah, no, it's a different caliber of MP5. Yeah, I mean, sure, would be cool to have. It's another MP5, like you said. It's the same argument of just, hey, let's have more AR-15s because we need 300 blackout AR-15s. We need AR-9s. It's like, yeah, that's true, but we also want to have different guns. So it might just be something you want to mod into the game and then make custom animations for the Vault release/hold open. So yeah, maybe that's more a thing.
Rando asks, is there a possibility of the HK416A5-8 being added to the as the new LMG?
The LMG? Oh, I didn't know the 416A5-8. I heard of that. I need to Google that. So if they're talking about just like the general assault rifle A5, yeah, for sure. I think HK is a little problematic in terms of markings, and that's why we don't have the 416 and 417, I believe. Might need to do some investigation there to see if we actually can do that. But yeah, it's a cool gun. Again, it's an AR-15, right? It's just a different gas system. So in the game, it would just be people saying, hey, why did you add another AR-15? We have the Mark 18. And then people will complain because we didn't add something that's more like, could add a G3 instead, or a VHS2, which is like a Croatian bullpup, which is much more different from what we already have. So yeah, it would be cool, but it's, again, a very similar gun.
Rando also asks, will there be special weapons to deal with specific SCPs? Well, you can educate me. My guess is I don't think so. I feel like the more esoteric SCPs, the idea is that like you're not supposed to be able to shoot them. You're supposed to be able to like outthink them with like puzzles. Like you can't outshoot the screen anomaly. You have to kind of like defeat the puzzle, right?
Exactly. I think it's more about, okay, so we have guns that shoot bullets, and then if the problem can be solved with a bigger bullet, yeah, I guess that could be a thing. We have talked about certain things that I can't really go into, where we're talking about specific guns that would fire certain bullets that would make sense in SCP universe, that it's like in real life you don't really need that because you're fighting humans, but hey, you're fighting SCPs here, so what would you actually pick? Because obviously when you're fighting humans, you don't need a big caliber weapon to take them out. Like, okay, that's arguably something for a realistic game. And then in our game, why wouldn't you, for example, have 50 caliber BMG rifles if you can actually take out the SCP with it, right? Because it's actually big enough, and you would have your Raufoss rounds, explosive, stuff. For example, could be interesting to see if we could do something with that. It's basically like you hear a big question, kind of debate within the studio, like, okay, so what do we want to do with that? And like you said, Isaac, if you start going in that direction of like, hey, you can kill everything with your guns, you're going from like Alien, the movie, to Aliens, right? Because it's like going from horror to like action. And if you're all powerful, it's like, okay, then there's no point in having these scary things because, yeah, you're literally just a god. Because if you're trained enough and you're making a perfect tactical solution with the perfect weapons and everything, it's like, yeah, you just go bananas over everyone, right? Like everyone just dies because you're such a perfect tactical team and no one has a chance to react before you're, so that's the thing, right? You need to find some way to kind of go beyond what is actually realistic here.
Yeah, like we all love Aliens, but I feel like Aliens isn't essentially the vibe of the game. Although some people forget that like Aliens isn't like slam rock action. Like most of the game, the Colonial Marines are kind of like have their back against the doors. They're outmatched and outgunned, and they're running low on ammo. Yeah, it's not supposed to be like Doom Eternal vibe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's something like try to get more that Resident Evil kind of you're low on ammo and your guns don't really work that well against everything kind of vibe without going super unrealistic. That's kind of the goal, I think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a more the vibe. As awesome as it would be to like give you a billion super weapons to like SCP-173 coming at me. Well, I'm just gonna like use my demolecurizer and break it down and just have it completely chipping concrete.
Yeah, exactly. And then yeah, you won. Woohoo! End credits or something. Yeah, that's it.
Rusty Bear Trap, he is working in Blender for animation. And question about gun selection. How do you guys get licenses to use guns? That is a good question.
Yeah.
How has that been handled so far?
Yeah, so like we said earlier, we have a guy basically that works directly with those companies that handles the licensing. In some cases, you could also talk directly to the companies, and in some cases, you don't. You don't get licenses from them, and you don't make those guns. Been a few examples where people have to change their logos. Glock, HK is prominent in that. And Ready or Not, I think, both made their what was it gun? AK or something, HAKA or something, and Schmock and Slock or something. Like they just changed their logos and try to get away with that, which I'm not sure if they do. Honestly, I can't tell. I've been told that it's not a good idea to do that, so yeah. Yeah. Maybe. But yeah, in general, it's like, yeah, having someone to deal with their basically PR department or the like outwards facing part of that company is a good idea because that means you can actually get a good relationship with the people making them without going all like we're supporting this brand because it's the best brand and we're supporting violence and war is good, right? Like you're trying to keep like guns are fun and they're in games. There's actually a really good video I recommend. I think it was GameSpot interviewing like Hyper, one of the best animators, like gun animators in the world, and a bunch of other people. I think who was it again? Like, I keep forgetting. I think it was Jonathan Ferguson had a video there, or it was maybe two separate videos. And also the guy from Forgotten Weapons, Ian McCollum, I think we're talking to him. All of those guys have videos apparently on that stuff, I think, where they just talk generally about their experience, for example, in big, like, AAA studios where they actually do have to change certain things about guns and actually change the design. and I'm not really sure why that is different in indie games. But it does seem to be a trend. Like, again, Ready or Not are all real firearms, more or less, with some fake markings. Ground Branch is just apparently not caring about it and have real HK markings as well. Operation Hard Doorstop, I believe, also has real HK markings. So I'm not sure, honestly. It could be that it's just like whatever goes, or it might be that they have different deals. Yeah, not safe to say.
What is like the biggest, most famous gun that we have featured in 5K?
Famous, like in what, the most recognizable
Yeah,
weapon is?
like what's like the Porsche or like the most recognizable gun brand that we got?
Oh, I mean, that kind of depends on you guys, right? Like if you were, for example, Isaac, to say what gun did you recognize first, or like what gun were like, oh, that's cool.
That's a good question, but I'm not a gun guy, so you know, as far as I'm concerned, all the like fictional guns they have in Resident Evil 4. Oh yeah, Red 9. That's total. So you know, I'm kind of like a dumb novice.
No, because that's kind of the question I'm leading to here, because it means it depends on who you ask, right? Because if, for example, you were kind of into, let's say, Die Hard, the movie, and then for that reason you knew about the Eckler&Koch MP5, right? Like that's a gun that you may or may not be very like, oh, that's really cool. I've seen that in Counter-Strike and also in that movie, so it's like that's my favorite gun. Or the P90 because we watched Stargate, way back when. If you remember the guy from MacGyver, right? He was playing in that sci-fi show, and they had P90s, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" Now I know what a P90 is, and I like that's my favorite gun. So that's kind of the thing. I think like the recognizable gun for me would be all of them, right? Because I just have a very keen interest, like people have in cars. Like, yeah, I do know that that gun is from that place, and I really think that's a cool gun. And I also like that AK because it's like the most like iconic gun in the world, right? Like it's just the shape of it is on the flag of a country, right? Like just a lot of stuff like that just depends on yeah, what the purpose of the brand is. Like, yeah, recognizable brand could also mean like just AK-47, or it could mean, oh wow, I see that particular HK brand or like the Grand Power brand, and I recognize that because I work there, or something. Like, yeah, it can be many things.
Very detailed, very broad answer.
Yeah, exactly. It just leads to more questions from me. I'm sorry.
No. I like that overview of it because I mean you're right. The MP5 from like Die Hard is like an iconic machine gun. But you know, I wouldn't think of like, you know, the Pontiac MP5 or like what the the manufacturer behind it is.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing, right? Like it depends on what you define as the brand, because yes, there is a company making them, but it doesn't mean that people know, for example, who made the AK-47. Like most people can say, yeah, that's an AK-47, but they couldn't tell you like what plants manufactured that particular brand of AK, right? Like, is that from Russia, or is it from Czech Republic, or is it from like somewhere else? That's just, yeah, could be very differing on like what you're actually asking. Yeah.
Rando says, by special weapons, I meant that items that could hold them back. I don't think that even like special items that are going to be things that could hold the SCPs back, because we want the SCPs to be dangerous. We want you to outthink them through cool puzzles. So I don't think that there's going to be like a magic wand that'll like stop 173 or stop the crab monsters or the more esoteric creatures. But you can ask Trey next time he appears.
Yeah.
Also have a question from Rando. Is there any plan to have any interchangeable stalker handguards or barrel lengths for weapons?
Yeah, we did answer that earlier as well, and it's definitely something questionable depending on what the plan is for the purpose. If you change a handguard, what does that do to the game? Is it just aesthetic? Again, the question was then when we discussed it earlier. Then we go into the whole just playing The Sims, kind of playing dress up with the guns, which I do like quite a bit. I think that's a cool thing to have in the game, and I think that would be a selling point in itself. It doesn't need to have a function. Other people might disagree with me. And then it ends up being like, hey, if we don't make it, we're certainly gonna make a bunch of mods that also, by the way, basically just bypasses any sort of what do you call it, like the licensing issues. Like if I wanted to have our fabled HK433 in the gun, for example, which is like just in Modern Warfare, I think. Why don't we make it in the quality that me and Samir can, animate it the way I can, and just release it as a free mod? You know, like why not? Because I do want that in the game. I want to play with it. And at that point, it's like, it doesn't matter if I'm getting paid to do it or not. It's just like, yeah, I just want to do that. Same with a real Glock, you know, like a Glock 17 with actual Glock brands. If you're not selling it, you're just making it for free. It's like, yeah, who's gonna call you out for that? It's like no one really owns it. No one really cares. So that's a thing. Could do pretty much that for everything that we don't do.
Do you guys have any famous SCPs like the Plague Doctor or the Shy Guy? I think one of the purposes of this SCP selection is to like kind of pick SCPs that aren't overexposed and also fit within the aesthetic of the game. Like, I have no idea how the Plague Doctor would make sense in Area 12 or like SCP-5K. It just feels like kind of like the element that would almost kind of like break immersion. And I think Shy Guy is just kind of like a little overexposed. But of course you can ask Trey if he shows up, since I can't say anything definitively. But that's the philosophy I've gotten just from running all these events and hearing him talk. But if you want to add the Plague Doctor via modding, obviously no one here is going to stop you. So the number of SCPs once we get on the Steam Workshop is infinite. But that will put it in your hands.
Yeah, that's also kind of the good thing that we have talked about in a phrase that we basically all of us came from modding some sort of game, which means that we are all very keen on having that in our game as well, as much as we possibly can. At least in the very end, we hope to have full modding support. We hope that we are actively participating in the modding ourselves. So it's like we're just making the tools jointly with the people making the mods, because it's something we also want to have. And then in the end, you would actually be able to, like you said, make your own like Plague Doctor rig and be able to understand how our animation sets and what kind of animations you would need to make a fully functional SCP in the game and so on. Like all of that stuff would make sense more so than if you were just modding some game where they just frown upon modding, right? Like that's typically the problem that you end up with, where it's like they don't really, well, the game developers don't really want you to do that too much. Like in Afraid, we actually do. We like to do it ourselves, and we do want to have as much modding as possible, because that's kind of how the game should develop.
I personally am looking forward to the day when I can see like a swarm of Plague Doctors come and whatchamacallit, swarm the players.
Yes, absolutely.
Why is the game not developed on Unity? Actually, that's a really good question. It's in Unreal now, right?
Yeah, and it's just superior, I think, at least for the kind of game that we want to make. I think also with the latest like Unity debacle, where they take, what was it again? Do you remember, Isaac?
Oh yeah, I remember. So they
Yeah.
went back on it, but they like wanted to like charge you for like how many times your game was downloaded, like an extra fee to like monetize it, because it was, the CEO changed hands to like this ultra corporate guy who wasn't really like that into the gaming community. After that, I think Unity lost a lot of trust. It almost screwed up SCP Josie, since Josie's being built in Unity. But thankfully, it worked out well. But yeah, just like a stupid tax for like, the Unity thing was awful because it wasn't just like how many times the game downloaded. If someone like downloaded the game, uninstalled it, and reinstalled it, that would count to your freaking install quota. So it was like how many times then they would demand it. It was just like such a prohibitive tax. It was completely unnecessary. That it would have just been a complete disaster.
Yeah, no, I agree. And of course, the fact is that we are also working, towards having Unreal Engine 5 at some point. Maybe not for this game, but it's like that seems to be a match made in heaven for the kind of game that we're making. Like really nice lighting, really good features with animations and mocap. There's just like, we are very much interested in seeing what we can, like what kind of technology can we potentially use in the future that are coming out with Unreal Engine 5, and in general, just like how far can we push really good quality, right? Like that's just going to be a big part of this as well.
And isn't Unreal kind of also the industry standard?
Yeah, I would say so. In terms of what we're making, it's like they're just handing us more and more features by the day. Like again, when we were at GDC and saw like the newest update to Unreal Engine 5 and the reveal they had there, and we were like, like 90% of what they're showing here is literally stuff we would like to put into our game right now because it just makes sense. Easier ways of doing like mocap animations, better sound systems, the whole lumen and nanite system, which is like you would instantly just get so much better lighting in your game just because the system is right there. Like you don't make it, it's sitting right there. You just need to utilize it in the right way. So it just makes sense. Like I said, it's it is the industry standard for the kind of game that we're making for a reason, I think.
Just out of curiosity, though, are all those features, are they in Unreal 5, or can you still use them in 4?
5 for the most part. I think Albarn is definitely like doing as much as he can to kind of backwards engineer stuff into 4. And we are staying with 4 as far as I know. But then at the same time, we never know, right? I don't really know for certain what's going to happen. And what I do know about 5 is that like if you're releasing a game on it right now, I think Gray Zone is on 5. I think it's a lot of performance issues because people don't have computers that can run 5. Like personally, I have like a 3080 Ti i9, and I can't really run like Beautiful Light well yet. The other game I'm working on the side, like that's like I have a pretty decent computer and I should be able to run it well, and it's really on like the cusp of what's possible to run right now. And if we have performance issues on 4, you can only imagine, Isaac, like how bad it would be if we moved to 5 and had these poor people just try to play our game. It's like nope, it doesn't work. You get like 1 frame and then your computer put your house on fire, and then sad times.
One of the weird things about this generation is it feels like it hasn't really kicked off. Like, I don't know, are there like current gen games that like you feel like brought the promise of next gen gaming, or is it just like a shinier version? It feels like kind of gaming from a feature standpoint and visual standpoint peaked in the PS3, Xbox 360 era, and everything we've just been getting is like slightly shinier textures. From a technical standpoint, is that like apt, or is there like I'm waiting for like a game that's like Gears of War that like feels like oh my god, I'm playing a Pixar movie. But I feel like we haven't gotten that yet. Or am I wrong? Is there some game I'm not thinking of?
No, I think you're right, and it's like almost there, like you said, but it's not going so fast that you kind of get that feeling. Like I looked back on what I consider to be really, really good, which was like Modern Warfare 2. Like, remember back when that came out in what, 2010, 2009, something like that?
Yeah.
Like that was really nice. That was a sweet looking game. I thought, wow, couldn't get much better than this, right? And then I look back at it now, it's just like it looks decent, but it's like I see that we have gotten very far, right? Like it's quite a big difference, but it just happens so slowly. Like I said, with I don't think we had that game yet, but it's probably gonna happen soon, right? Must be.
I feel like Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be like the big moment where we finally understand, or where we finally kind of like get to that next level.
Yeah, potentially, absolutely.
That feels
Remember
like
5, how good that was, yeah. That was insane when that came out.
Well, have you seen the trailer for 6?
Yeah, absolutely, and it looks really good.
I'm sure it'll require like 500 gigabytes to install, and I'm terrified to see what the system requirements for that are going to be. But I'm looking forward to playing it eventually. All right, I'm seeing if there are any more questions. I am starving.
I think it's time, Isaac. Yeah, we have been starving you for long enough.
Well, it was my mistake. You know those times where you kind of like don't get to bed at a good time, but then you just kind of like can't fall asleep, and then you kind of have to shower yourself to wake up in the morning. That's kind of like what I was like, and I made the fool mistake of not having a breakfast ready to prepare myself.
Oh,
but you know,
it's a fair mistake, though.
well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the IHOP. They've got a gimmick menu for that stupid If movie. So I'm going to get some cinnamon pancakes and maybe like a French toast waffle sandwich or something. We'll see how indulgent I get. But yeah, I'm starving. But hey, it's always good to increase it, and I hope you had fun. And it's always a pleasure to host you and watch you do your thing. I guess one question is, what is the purpose of those 4 squares that I see in the main window?
Yeah, so that is basically just to see later in the process you would see camera animation. So if I was, for example, to load up something else like the inspect, go. Yep, we will now see that these squares will move. There we go. And they move a little bit because they're basically just part of the camera animation. So they kind of help me visualize what's going on there.
All right.
That hand is broken. Hang on.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
So look out for I'm working on a big movie night. I don't know if it'll be this week, but it might be the next week after. It all depends. I've got a big talent I'm looking for to see to get if he can collaborate. So look forward to that. On this Monday, as of right now, at 9:00 EST, 6:00 PST. Bowman is going to be doing a live stream, the CEO of Affray, to talk about the state of the 0.14 update and talk about the feedback we've been getting and address the community. So tune in for that. I will post notifications for that as soon as I can. I hope to see as many of you there to reflect on what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy. That's always an important process. I'm sure we'll eventually get you here again. One other question someone asked: How many people you all guys have developing the game? What is it, like 40 or 50 people at Affray, or is it less than that?
I think it's like ballpark 50 if you count all the people that are like scope of work, which means they're part-time or like not full-time employees, basically. So yeah, we're not very big, but we're growing. Like we didn't used to be that many, so it's definitely we're feeling it in the team that we're actually becoming more people and more specialized people that can come in and help.
Which is always exciting. The more people means the more interesting content that we can get out to you at a hopefully faster rate. So thank you for attending and hanging out with us for this live stream. Hope you are having fun in the 0.14 update. And I will see you on Monday, unless the time changes. But stay tuned for that. And Anders, thank you so much for finding the time and for us finding the magical hours that didn't involve you doing this at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it was nicer to have it at this time for me. But yeah, thank you guys. I'll definitely post this when it gets done, so we'll see it actually done instead of this kind of quirky blockout right now. It looks kind of weird. But yeah, it's gonna be exciting to show you guys what this is gonna look like eventually.
All right. And with that, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, if it is your weekend. And stay tuned. I hope to see many of you at the next movie night. I have a special fun idea that I think you guys will get a kick out of to celebrate the 0.14 update. All right. And with that, I bid you adieu, and I will see you hopefully on Monday. And I guess I'm so bad at goodbyes. I keep on saying like I can never quite end it. Any final thoughts?
Go eat.
All right. I should
get food. Yes.
I should definitely shout.
Take care of yourself, man.
All right. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you soon.
You too, man. Goodbye. Thank you, guys.
All right. I have ended the stream. Thank you so